Dante. And we drop into the frame. Hi. You're fine. Big man. So this is Dante. What's up, y'all? My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In The Image Clothing Company. Today is the 10th of January, 2026. And this is In The Image Clothing Company Podcast, one of our fourths, where what we do here is have discussions on the gospel of Jesus Christ, aka the truth of all things, right? No claim, no religion, no belief. You don't have to care to even care. But, you know, we're all human beings. We're all the same thing. We're all placed on the same earth, designed by one God. You don't have to care about anything, but there's universal truth to life. Otherwise, yeah, well, there just is. Don't believe me. Okay, anyway, the point is there's visual plus audio, as well as just audio only, two forms of viewing in the Image Clothing Company podcast. This is episode 201, titled If I Didn't Know. And really the point is, if you didn't know something, you couldn't. And there's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled How Could You Know? Okay. And this kind of goes right along with that, but we're going to get into it. Anyway, this is starting differently than most have up until now. But that's the point, right? Blunt, bold, raw, and real. In the Image Clothing Company, we do it as we do it. And that's how we do it, because the only way you do anything is how you did it. And so being authentic is truth. There's only truth to life. What I'm saying is the gospel of Jesus Christ, it's an explanation to life. You don't have to believe in anything. I don't believe in anything personally. Me, Evan Strong, the man speaking in this. I'll be the only one speaking in this, unless Dante decides to chime in with some words, but probably not. He is a standard poodle. But, you know, the big point is we in life have a lot of things that we just couldn't know unless we were taught. Okay, so the episode title here, if I wasn't taught, you know, how do you expect me to know something if I wasn't taught anything about it? We come into this world, into this life as human beings, and we get our memory wiped, essentially. Yeah. Do we call it a B flat? Yeah, we get our memories wiped, essentially, coming into this life as human beings, babies, right? And so we just don't know what we don't know. We can't be held accountable for what we don't know, because if I wasn't taught, you can't expect me to know it, right? Anything in life, I mean, that's the point. A lot of times people kind of just expect you to know things. Maybe they grew up in an area or a family situation or a time period where things were just different than what you experienced, and you just don't have any idea what they're talking about, and they just expect you to know. Well, that's where you use the phrase like, well, if I wasn't taught, how could I possibly know? Because we come into this life not knowing really anything. You know, as babies, you have to teach a baby everything. And they learn that by watching, you know, people do things. Same with dogs. Dogs as puppies, they don't know anything. They're a puppy. They're brand new to this whole world. You know, we discuss it like this because this is how it is. It's the man-made world placed onto God's natural earth. Yeah, 4 sides to In The Image Clothing Company. On the main side of In The Image Clothing Company, we discuss eating, breathing, standing, walking, sitting, sleeping, hydration, everything we do as a human being, and doing these things naturally. Our slogan is allowing the body to work. And really we do it through clothing, because everything we do in our lives, we do it through clothing. Clothing is the only thing physically placed on our physical human bodies that are just a mechanical machine, despite popular anything. There's only one way the human body could ever work. There truly is only one way the human body could ever work. There's a neutral to every function, and we don't have some claim. We don't have like, check out our 18-week program. Once you pay us half your year's salary, and then you might know something that could be valid. No, we do all we do to get down to truth. Under In the Image Clothing Company, it's very rare for me to cough. That's the whole point. You know, if I wasn't taught, how could I know? There's all these people out here saying all this garbage, and just how could you know? So we allow the body to work. Clothing has to stay centered and fit correct, be made in all the ways we can from 100% natural materials. And we don't have any question possible, you know, that you could be left with, I guess. Under In the Image Clothing Company, we show how clothing sits and why. The body's just mechanics, okay? The human body is just mechanics. A video under the main side of In the Image Clothing Company is just the case, though. The human body only pulls. Another video under the main side of In the Image Clothing Company. The human body is a skeletal frame, right, with bones, and then it just has muscles that connect to those bones through tendons. And even if we're closing a joint or opening a joint, it's always just a pull of musculature, either on one side or the other. There's just opposing muscles to every function. And muscles only connect to bones through the tendons, right, at their endpoints, and all they can do is pull directly in line from the endpoints. Sometimes there's multiple endpoints for muscles, but yeah, there truly is only one way the human body could ever work. It's been the same since God. It's been the same since always, designed in the image of Jesus Christ, God himself. In the Image Clothing Company, our 5-word company name there. God had to first look like us in order to design us in his image, and God is, and always, the same yesterday, today, and forever. So yeah, there's no opinion, and we don't have any kind of thing we could take credit for under In the Image Clothing Company. There's no new information, but people are just very lost as we get, you know, in our world we live in. It's crazy, you know, but that's what I mean is, if I wasn't taught, how could I know? So anyway, a lot of what this is just a discussion here on things that we couldn't possibly know if we weren't taught. It really is a lot of the same type of approach as that episode titled, How Could You Know? Under In the Image Clothing Company podcast, but we'll just talk about different things in here than we did in there, you know, and there's just a lot to this, because that's what life is. You know, we're here to learn and grow. We do that through making mistakes. We do that from personal experience. Like I say, trial and error, prayer and revelation. That's how we understand what we do as human beings. That's how we do what we do under In the Image Clothing Company. Very clearly worded, a company, meaning a community, not a business. Really, it's very clearly worded, you know, not a business. We're not a business here. We're just a company of people, you know, doing what we do, getting closer to God. And yeah, it's just this whole idea of, if I wasn't taught, how could you possibly expect me to know something? But also, if I know something, I might be wrong. You know, we get taught things as well in life that are just wrong. Well, let's talk about this, because there is 1/4 of In the Image Clothing Company that is In the Image Clothing Company poodles. We specialize in purebred standard poodles. Dante here is a standard poodle. But we give information on letting dogs stay natural, the same thing as allowing the body to work of the human beings on our main side of In the Image Clothing Company. But on In the Image Clothing Company poodles, our information on letting dogs stay natural applies to all dogs across the earth, and, you know, the majority, maybe most all animals as well, okay? So the same things, right? Eating, feeding the dogs, right? Hydration for the dogs, just the dogs in general, man. They live in this world, and they're domesticated animals. They would never have anything placed onto them that was designed by human beings, unless human beings designed things and domesticated the animals and then put the things onto the animals. It's like the human body. It was designed by God to work. It just will unless we alter it. Same with the dogs. So anyway, a lot of this is just, if I wasn't taught, how would I know anything? Coming into this world as a little baby who doesn't know anything. A little baby can't even lift their own head up. A little puppy can't even lift their own head up. And so if these things aren't taught, they don't know anything. So with dogs, on the end of human beings, a lot of human beings can say it like this: if I wasn't taught that dogs can be better behaved than a lot of human beings, then how could I know? I've said it very clearly many times, documented under the gift of video. Okay, we do so much and always will under the gift of video, under all four sides of In the Image Clothing Company. But I've said there's a lot of reasons why we chose specifically the breed of poodle, and then specifically the standard size, which is the large size of poodle, for what we do with our dog fourth of In the Image Clothing Company. And what we do with our dog fourth of In the Image Clothing Company isn't only breeding purebred standard poodles and showing why it's important to have pure breeds in dogs for the health of dogs, and it's not only keeping less dogs in shelters and more dogs at homes by teaching how to be good owners of dogs. It's not only showing how to hold leashes and things like slip leads naturally to not alter our bodies as the owners of our dogs. It's not only discussing the benefit of large-sized dogs for the sake of the human being's physical health, and the dogs as well. We do so much under In the Image Clothing Company poodles. Okay, letting collars, leashes, and harnesses stay centered, be light, and fit the dogs correct, so we don't take years off the lifespan of the dogs from just something like an imbalanced or heavy collar or harness or something. We really give a lot of beautiful information for free. We do so much through video and always will. Okay, we'll always have good dog products and good human being clothing on InTheImageClothingCompany.com to allow the body to work and to let the dog stay natural. Okay, we're doing things for the reasons we're doing things. You can have any kind of opinion or belief on what we're doing here. You're wrong if it's not what we're doing here. We're only doing what we're doing under In the Image Clothing Company and all four sides. So anyway, our dogs, they're great, right? In the Image Clothing Company's poodles, they're just as much our team members as our human being team members. Okay, that's how it will always be. And Dante's the first. Dante's a rescue. He's coming up on 2 years old, give or take. From the South Utah Valley Animal Shelter. He was a true rescue. He needed a lot more help than I realized when I first adopted him. Okay. Yeah, the rescue. In a company full of, purebred registered dogs, he's the first. And a lot of people don't know that dogs can be so amazing, It's that's the phrase, right? If I wasn't taught that there can be dogs out there that aren't just snarly, barking, drooly, disruptive, disobedient, aggressive, all over the furniture, scratching the walls, shedding hair or fur all over the place, probably fur, not hair. But if you weren't taught that dogs can be like poodles are, and there's other dog breeds that are similar in a lot of ways, then you just wouldn't know, right? Poodles, they don't drool. They don't shed. They have hair rather than fur. They're technically what they call hypoallergenic. That's all I'm going to really say on that for right now. Okay, technically is the point. Yeah. Dante basically never barks. They are extremely smart and just naturally want to please their owners. They're what people call clingy dogs. They want to just always be with you and please you as their owner. And so if you don't know, if you weren't taught that there are some really amazing dogs out there, then you just wouldn't know. If what you've seen in your life is dogs barking and drooling and digging holes in the yard and getting into things and chewing up everything, right? Yeah, all the bad things that come with dogs, because those are bad things, truly. those are the things that we do what we can to rid through training. A lot of times you don't really have to do all that much training with a really good dog breed. That's why we advocate for purebred dogs. Poodles, specifically, under In the Image Clothing Company, poodles. But you can say, if I wasn't taught that dogs can keep a house cleaner than a human being, then how could I know? Maybe you've seen your friends' dogs or family's members' dogs or dogs on the television or in movies, and they're just causing havoc. Yeah, there's a lot of absolutely, in all truth, terrible dogs out there. There are legitimately just, that's the word, terrible dogs. There are. There are. And so you can say, well, if I wasn't taught, then, to me, a dog's a dog. And what I've seen a dog being is just, too much for me to handle. Well, yeah, that's why we teach people. That's what we do on In the Image Clothing Company Poodles. That's what it means to show and advocate for being a good owner of dogs and how to. Well, today Dante and I filmed a video under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles titled A Discussion on Obedience with Dante. And there was a lot to it. It was about an hour and a half long, give or take, an hour and 20-something minutes maybe. Dante is amazing, yeah, I mean, you can say, if I wasn't taught, how could I know that dogs aren't just always going to pull on a leash? You see dogs out there just pulling on a leash, and all the owner can really do is just barely hold the dog back so the owner doesn't fall onto the ground because the dog's pulling so hard. Dante doesn't pull on a lead or a leash at all. If he does, I correct his behavior. Dante walks right next to me. Not only that, I can take Dante's lead off of him, and Dante will walk right next to me with nothing connecting the two of us together. And so you can say, if I wasn't taught that dogs can be so well obedient and well behaved, well, then how could I know they could be? It's just an animal. And that's what we advocate for that as well, though, under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles. Also, there's a video under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles titled Dante the Advocate. Our dogs are advocates for dogs, okay? Under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles, the breed of poodle is generally just an amazing dog anyway, and then we will do all that we can do, as In the Image Clothing Company Poodles, to have really, really, really well-behaved, obedient, good dogs, okay? Properly bred and healthy as well, right? That's the point. So Dante is one of those, okay? We didn't breed Dante under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles, but he's amazing. Okay. And yeah, we advocate, though, for seeing a dog as a dog. You've got to realize a dog is just an animal because it's just an animal. You have to see that. You can't expect the dog to know anything unless you teach it. You see owners of dogs where you do, or I have at least, I'll speak for myself, but I know a lot of people have seen this. You'll see the owners of a dog get so after the dog for not doing what the owner thinks the dog should do. This is just an animal. The dog can say, if I wasn't taught, how could I possibly be expected to know what you're trying to tell me? Looking up at the human being who's the owner, that's just speaking like English language to them, for example, and the dog's like, I don't speak English. What are you trying to do? You think I'm going to know what you're saying to me? The dog can use the phrase, if I wasn't taught, I wouldn't know what you expected from me. It's just an animal. If we didn't domesticate dogs, they'd just be a wild animal. That's how you advocate for being a good owner of dogs. That's how you teach how to be a good owner of dogs, is you show and tell people, make it very clear, this is just an animal. It's not going to just obey you because you think it should. The dog will sit there and say, if I wasn't taught, that you want me to, what? Some kind of command you give your dog that they couldn't possibly know what you're saying until you teach them. The dog's like, I wouldn't know what to do unless you taught me. How could I? The dog's looking up at you like, what, are you really expecting me to know the language you're speaking until, before you teach me how to speak the language? I mean, it's like somebody speaking to you in a different language that you don't know how to speak, and it's as if they, are expecting you to know how to speak their language. And you're like, well, if I wasn't taught your language, how am I going to know how to speak your language? You know? But anyway, it just is what it is. It's we don't know what we don't know. We can't be held accountable for what we don't know. But you also can't be judgmental, you know? You can't be judging the dog and getting after it for not knowing how to do something. It's not its fault. But in life also, you can't be getting after people or dogs because you have an opinion or a belief and you think the dog's just something the dog isn't, you know? I mean, if you just think the dog's being so destructive and disruptive and, damaging property when it's not, well, that's your fault, But where's it coming from? Because then you can say, well, if I wasn't taught that dogs could be so good, I just figured it wasn't good. Well, don't assume. Don't assume. And let's not say that so lighthearted. Let's put the foot down and say, don't assume. You do this with human beings. If you do that with anything, you could do it just as easy as what I mean. With a human being, maybe you have like a family of people. And one person in the family that isn't a very well-behaved human being, let's say it like that, okay? You know what I mean, if you know what I mean. Yeah, someone who's just pretty disrespectful and, pretty hard person to be around because they're just, not that great of a human being. Well, you can't judge the rest of the family like that and be like, well, I know your brother or I know your dad and whoever it is. It's like, they're a terrible person. They did some terrible things to me, No one's really a terrible person, but people sure have some terrible behaviors, But just because one person does inside of a family, you can't judge the rest of the family and say, yeah, well, you're from the same family. You're all like that. Well, if the truth is they're not, then you're wrong, And so you can say the phrase, well, if I wasn't taught that not everyone in your family was, as, well, what do we say to just be real about it, Like, I mean, I don't even know, right? But there's just some people out there, man, that are so hard to be around. Some people who are just pretty terrible people, man, in their current state of behavior, at least, And so you can say, if I wasn't taught that your whole family's not like that, how could I have known? Well, maybe you didn't know, but don't assume. That's the big thing is assumptions, man. Assumptions will take you to hell quick. You start assuming things that you don't know. It's like that episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled, You Don't Know What You're Talking About. I wasn't being mean. It wasn't a me versus you, whoever you could be. It was just, if you don't know what you're talking about, do not speak. It goes for every one of us. Otherwise, you put your own foot in your mouth. It's like I'm saying, you've got a family of people, and one of the people in the family, and they're like really not that great of a person to be around, and you don't even want them to be around you. It's like, just because one person in the family's like that doesn't mean the whole family's like that. And if you think so, you're making an assumption that is a wrongful judgment, right? That's going to send you straight to hell. But also, you might just be wrong. Not only is it not right to assume and judge because God says not to, it's just not our place or our role to do that as human beings. We're all equals, If you don't know, there you go. Okay, even if it's hard to see, we are equal human beings. Those are God's words, not mine. Okay, but you can't just judge a whole family just because you know one person in the family, and so you just kind of expect everybody else to have the behaviors that you don't appreciate from one person in the family. It's like you see one dog out there, and the dog's just tearing stuff up, destroying property, or just so barky and loud and noisy, and just all the truly bad behaviors. When it comes to, we take dogs under our ownership and we expect certain things of them, being domesticated animals. There is bad behavior in what we expect in an animal that we domesticate. See what I mean? And that's fine. That's fine because that's what we've done. We've domesticated dogs. But just because you see a dog that has some terrible behavior, you can't then say, that's how all dogs are. No, that's false. You are wrong. And you're hurting yourself, right? You're damaging yourself by making an assumption and a judgment that is not correct. So, same with the family. You got a whole family of people. One person there that's not so great. Just the truth of it, right? There's some people out there that are really not so great. At all. Some pretty bad people, okay? At least in their current state of what they're doing with their life, how they're treating people or property or, life in general. But just because of that one person, you can't say the whole family's like that. The rest of the entire family, besides that one human being in it, might be some of the best people you've ever met in your life. So, yeah, this phrase is it's interesting because it's not something you can just say, like, well, I was never taught, so I can make all the judgments I want. No, it's like, if I wasn't taught, then I have no place to say a word about it if I don't know anything about it. Okay. But yeah, you're probably just not going to know anything. You don't know what you don't know, but you can't be held accountable for what you don't know. That doesn't mean you can make judgments just because you don't know something. And assumptions, that's a road straight to hell. Okay, so it just is what it is, It's funny though, and it's ironic just because, well, yeah. Because we don't know what we don't know. It is so weird, If I wasn't taught anything, I wouldn't know anything, Man, it's just crazy. We need to teach. Listen to this if you would. God puts so much focus on the family. Jesus Christ, our God, our creator, man. He set it up how he set it up. Look in nature, families are just families in nature. Animals, okay? They're just only the way that the dynamic of a family within each animal species works, and it just naturally does it. It just happens, okay? God has set up the family. Sorry, I'm like burping. Not like burping. That is what I was doing. Anyway. God set up the family the way he set up the family, okay? And so it's like, if I wasn't taught how a family should be structured, then you're just not going to know. You're out there doing some terrible things, and you don't know they're terrible things. Well, it's like this, some kid grows up in a bad household, and they don't know it's a bad household. Well, who's to say? Is there really universally good or bad? Yes. Look up episode 200 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast if you'd like. It's titled Measuring Truth. There is universal truth, and it couldn't possibly be disputed. Okay, that's all I'm going to say on that for right now. Let's say a kid grows up in a bad household, though, and people are just drinking and doing drugs all the time, and they're just having a pretty terrible throwaway kind of life. The kid grows up and just continues doing what he was raised within, or her, either way, right, man or woman. It doesn't matter, whoever it is, They go on and do whatever they were raised seeing, and they could say the phrase, like, if I wasn't taught that this wasn't the best way to live, then how am I going to know there's a better way to live? We have to teach. This is why we teach the gospel of Jesus Christ. It's the truth of all things. It's not a religion. It's not a belief. It's an explanation to life. It lines up. I've given this invitation, if you will, like, try not to believe in anything. See what's left. You still exist. You had to come from somewhere. Even if you believe you didn't, well, you're here, Even if you believe you're not, you're here, if you are. But how do you know? Well, there's truth. I mean, like, it's just crazy. There's only truth to life. That's it. Ever, always, only, and that is it. And no human being could ever possibly decide it or change it. And so that's the thing, is there is truth to there being bad households, bad family dynamics, bad upbringings, and you didn't get to decide. Not really, right? I mean, you didn't really get to decide in this life who you were born into in your family, right? We can get discussing about premortal life and whatever. But like when we just look at this life and we think about it, we come into this world and our memories are just wiped clean from what was before this, okay? You're a baby, you're a blank slate, you're a puppy, you're a blank slate. You're just a baby of any animal or anything, even a seedling of a plant. You don't know anything yet. And if you weren't taught anything, you would just continue in this state of not knowing anything. How could you know something if you don't? Right? That's just how this life works. That's why this life is what it is. That's what I'm saying. We're here to learn and grow. But if you weren't taught anything through your whole life, you would never learn anything through your whole life. And so, you're growing up as a little kid in a household full of just some really, really badness. Do you hear that? And we know, man, a lot of us know this, like, so very deeply and personally. Well, after having grown up in a household like this, you got to be able to be taught that what you grew up in was not healthy. It was not normal. It was not safe. And, we can throw the word normal around, and who's to say? But we can say the word right. And yeah, there's a right way to treat people, if you see what I mean. If you weren't taught what it means to treat someone well, you're not going to know. And that's the thing, is a lot of people only know what they grew up in. A lot of people grow up in family situations and they literally think, which is absolute delusion, but also you couldn't possibly know otherwise until you do. So, right, where do we really put the words and labelings on things with that? Because it's kind of on both ends. It's just crazy. You don't know what you don't know, but it's still there even if you don't know it, right? Truth is truth even if you haven't been introduced to it. Really, yeah. Really him, all right? God is the truth. Jesus Christ, that's another name for him, is the truth. Jesus Christ is God is an episode title of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Don't believe me, dude. Don't believe me on anything. Don't believe in the Image Clothing Company's information. Anyone at In the Image Clothing Company's team, don't believe in anything. See what happens. There's truth to life. There has to be. Some people don't believe in anything, and they still exist. If you think it's your beliefs that make you who you are, well, what if you stopped believing in them? Would you just disappear? No. The truth is, truth. Truth always exists. That's God. Okay. The point is, it doesn't matter if you think that every human being on the planet structures their life the same way that you saw life be structured growing up in your household with all this bad stuff going on. It's not true. I mean, there's just so much different out there. And the focus really is just, if you're not taught, you're not gonna know. This is the thing. It's kind of on the it's kind of on the opposite side of the same discussion of that episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled "How Could You Know?" Right? That was kind of just like discussing the ignorance and of not knowing. Right? Ignorance just means not knowing. And then this side of it for this episode 201. Right, 201 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast here titled, If I Wasn't Taught. It's just kind of the opposite side of it. Like, let's focus on the side of teaching things that we don't know. Because if you don't know, well, how could you? But if we can teach you, then you know, right? Because that's the point, I mean, you can have a dog that's just going to behave like a wild animal. And why wouldn't it? It's an animal. If you don't teach the dog to do what you're trying to get the dog to do, the dog's not going to just do what you want, I mean, isn't that crazy to think? That your dog could just do what you want without you telling it? Well, now let's say it like this. What about your children? Or what about your children in your class if you're a school teacher, right? Not only your biological children, and then what about the kids you babysit? If you're like babysitting or just, tending, I don't know what other words they use, but like looking after someone else's children for a while, whoever it is, and it doesn't have to just be children, it could just be any other human being on the planet, any other animal ever. It doesn't matter, dude. I mean, how could someone know something if they weren't taught? People expect you to know stuff and they don't teach you. Man, crazy, dude. I mean, it's true delusion. It's crazy. It's my dad, dude. Not to badmouth anyone, but just to speak the truth. Growing up, my dad always expected me to just know what he wanted from me or what he thought I should do, even if he didn't tell me or ask me to do it, or how to. That's what I mean. A lot of parents. Not to put the focus on my own situation, but just that's a little context on me personally there. But then, just back to generalized human beings, because we all deal with the same problems in different ways or different problems in the same ways. We're just all human beings, the same thing, placed on the same earth, designed by the same God, Jesus Christ. Yeah, that's what I mean. You don't have to believe in anything. Everyone else is just like you. Even if you want to believe they aren't, the truth is they are. There's a universal human design, There's the fact that we're all just doing the same thing, even if it looks different. We're on the same planet here. Okay, there is truth and only. Nothing else exists besides truth. Okay, that's the truth. Don't believe me. Okay, what I'm saying is a lot of people expect, especially children. Okay, usually it's mostly children. It can happen from full-grown adult to full-grown adult. But a lot of people just expect other people to know things that they were never taught. And you don't just know things in this life. That's what this life is, man, is learning. I mean, yeah, dude, it's crazy. It's crazy. And that's the thing is I have a hard time with that because I am very prideful. And a lot of that comes from me being so smart. I've discussed this before, people who are really smart, really intellectual, really quick, like they understand things quick and learn things quick. A lot of times that makes it hard to not be prideful. It's just the truth, because it's just how that works. I mean, you know something or you learn something really quick and you're just expecting someone else to learn it as quick as you, but maybe they just don't learn things quite as quick as you do, So I get it. I get it personally is what I'm saying. I really get it on the end of actually expecting people to know things that they just don't, but yeah, I mean, if you're not taught things, you're just not going to know. And so then who's going to teach you? But that's why it's so interesting because who is going to teach you? Man. Well, there's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled, Why Would You Listen? I mean, I was talking about myself, Evan Strong, as the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. I'm in this for life to lead In the Image Clothing Company. Like, why would you listen to me or anyone under In the Image Clothing Company's team? Why would you listen to us out of anyone out there, When we say we discuss things that apply to literally every human being to ever live, we discuss universal truth to the best of what we can in our imperfect ways. Well, why would you believe us? What if someone else is just saying the same thing and everyone's just claiming it and no one actually knows? Anyway, what I was saying in there is we have to look to God who knows everything. Okay, and even if you don't believe in God, that's fine. I don't. But I know him. God is there if you believe in him or not. That's why there's that episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled, You Don't Need to Believe in God. It's not going to change the fact that he is there. And don't think I'm just claiming something I could call a fact. Again, it's just apart from all of us, There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Go Through God, where I discussed, routing our questions through God, because how are we going to know how to trust anyone else? Even if we ask someone a question and they might be a professional or a specialist in it, still, does that mean they know all that there is to know about it? And are they actually accurate with everything they would have to say to you about it? So that's what I'm saying here is if I wasn't taught, how would I know anything? But then who do I really get taught from? And how do I know that just because somebody's teaching me something, it's accurate and it's correct? So we have to go through God. I mean, that's the point. That's what I mean. We have to really take all of everything to God first. Well, really only, not just first. Why would you go anywhere else after you seek the all-knowing, right? Jesus Christ, he knows everything before and after it happens. Don't believe me, but pray to God in the name of Jesus Christ, and check out the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. There is truth to life, and you don't have to believe it, and that's such a relief. Everyone pushing all their beliefs out there. Well, if it matters if you do believe it, then does it matter if you don't believe it, or does it only matter if you don't believe it? But then what about all the times you never believed it? Does believing it make it true? Anyway, see, it's like there's only truth, even if you don't believe that it's true. And what I'm saying is, if you weren't taught anything, then what do you have? How do you know anything? Well, you have your little pieces of perceptions, other people's words and your own views and opinions, other people's views and opinions and perspectives on things. But you can't have an opinion on anything if there's not first something there to have an opinion on. You can't believe in something or believe against something, right? Or, choose to believe something or choose not to believe something unless you're first there, at least, to be able to have the option to believe in something or not. There's always truth. It has to be there first. Okay? We can even say it like this, if you believe in something, then the truth is you told me you believe in something. If you just told me that you believed in something, well, that's the truth, is you spoke those words, right? There's always truth. You can get to it. It's not far away. His name is Jesus Christ. But if I wasn't taught anything, well, I'm still here. I still exist as a human being. And so there's got to be something to me, And what there is to you is your accumulation of ideas and perspectives, perceptions, opinions, and beliefs of life. But what if none of those things were there? Would life still exist? Because all those things are on life. Perceptions on life, beliefs on life, opinions on life, right? Views on life, and all the things that come secondary to life just being life before you were even here to experience it. What? It's crazy. That's what I mean. It's crazy that when you get that aha that there is just only truth and nothing else exists. Okay? And so you can ask that question, if I wasn't taught, how could I know? And a lot of times it's on both ends. It's on the good end and it's on the bad end, And there is truly a good end and a bad end to those things. Because it can be a good end, a relief, someone can be so scared about something because they heard all these terrible things about it, or how bad it was, how intimidating it was, how prepared they should be. Otherwise, it might be the worst experience of their life with something in life, no matter what it is. But they weren't actually taught what it actually was. So they get up to the thing and it's nothing like anybody's opinions or beliefs, perceptions, views on what it was that they heard. It's only what it is. So if you weren't taught what something actually is, you either don't know anything about it at all, and then it just doesn't even exist to you, which that's a possibility, right? There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled If You Didn't Exist. Basically what I said is nothing else could either. If you didn't, how could you say it did if you weren't there to know? That's what I mean, right? If I wasn't taught that stuff exists, then maybe it doesn't. How could you have a say otherwise, right? That's crazy, but that's the truth. I mean, yeah. How could it not be determined by if you exist? That can be a real question. Like, try to answer that for me, because it's you that's answering it. And if you didn't exist, you wouldn't be there to answer. So the answer is no. It wouldn't exist if you didn't. Nothing could. Not really, and that's got to be kind of seen with some context, but that is really the truth of how that would have to be. Look at Dante's face, the camera lens. You good boy, Dante. That's what I mean. If you weren't taught that dogs were good where they are, that there's amazing dogs out there, well, you might be so terrified about what could come from having a dog in your vicinity, within close proximity to you. Maybe you got all this fear about dogs. You've never seen a dog, let's say, but someone's just telling you all these things about dogs. They have these big teeth. They have this mouth that really opens wide, and they could fit your whole arm inside their mouth, and they could chomp it right off. And they bark so loud, you have to cover your ears, and they stink, and they get hair all over you. You can't even really get it off of your own clothing unless you go take it off and wash it. And they telling you all these terrible things about a dog, and it's like, well, if I wasn't taught the actual truth, how would I know what was actually true? This is what I mean by we have to teach. We have to teach. That's what God has sent us here to do, is teach. That's what he says to Peter. Simon Peter. He asks him 3 times in a row, Simon, lovest thou me? He asks that 3 times. Really what that means in modern 2026 English is, Peter, do you love me? But God is all-knowing. Jesus Christ is God. Jesus Christ is asking Peter something he already knows. He's asking Peter, Peter, do you love me? And Peter says, yeah, you know that I love you. Jesus Christ asks Peter again, Peter, do you love me? And Peter says, yes, Master, you know that I love you. And Jesus Christ asks Peter again, Peter, do you love me? And Peter says, yes. Like, he's basically thinking, like, you just asked me the same question 3 times. Like, not only have I answered it twice before this last one, but you already know everything. You don't need to ask me to know. But where was I going with that? I mean, that's just beautiful. But, teaching, yeah. What Jesus Christ then says to Peter is, after Peter answers 3 times yes, that he loves Jesus Christ says to Peter, feed my sheep. Okay? Feed my lambs, feed my sheep. Meaning, feed the rest of the human beings that are just like you. We're all sons and daughters of God. We're all sheep of God, who is the perfect shepherd. We're all just children looking to our perfect Father in heaven, God himself, Jesus Christ, who knows everything, and we don't. So it's the whole question. If I wasn't taught, how could I know anything? Well, that's what Jesus Christ was saying to Peter when he says, feed my sheep, or feed my lambs. When Jesus Christ called Peter, right, Simon Peter, the apostle of Jesus Christ, to be his apostle, which means messenger or follower, disciple, synonyms, kind of meaning different things, sort of, but basically the same thing, just meaning, yeah, those things that I just said, right? So a follower of God, someone who's trying to be the sheep to the shepherd of God, trying to be the son to the perfect father of God. Do you see what I mean? Or the daughter to the perfect father of God. But in Simon Peter's case, he's a man. When he got called to be an apostle, a messenger of Jesus Christ, by Jesus Christ himself, Simon Peter was a fisherman. That's what he did for his occupation. And Jesus Christ said, you will no longer fish for fish, but you will be a fisher of men. You will fish for human beings, fish for mankind, right? Men and women. In other words, you will gather them the way that you gather fish in a net and bring them in. You will gather people and bring them in to the fold of the sheep of God, if you will, into the body of Jesus Christ. And Peter's like, Peter's a fisherman. He probably didn't know what it meant to be a fisher of men, right? Like a fisher of mankind, a human being who was told to go fish for other human beings. He's like, okay, probably like, I don't know what you're asking of me, but all right, we'll see where this goes. Jesus Christ just performed a miracle right before then, and Simon Peter was having a hard time catching fish. He needed to make some money, because that was his occupation, fishing, to bring income in. He'd sell the fish, to other people to eat. And he was fishing, and he wasn't able to bring in any fish in his nets. So Jesus Christ, he performed a miracle, a true, literal, actual miracle. Jesus Christ being God, who can do anything. He's the Almighty, not only the All-Knowing. Anyway, what he did is he just caused an absurd amount of fish to be able to be brought in for Peter. Okay, and Peter then had the money he needed. He got the catch, of fish that he needed, and it was just, exceeding all expectations, as God does to those that serve him, right? So, yeah, all things work together for the good of those that serve God. We have to know who God is, right? Read the Word of God is an episode title of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, meaning the Book of Mormon, the Holy Bible, scriptures of Jesus Christ. We have to know who Jesus Christ is before we can serve him. As I've said many times, we discuss under In the Image Clothing Company podcast here, Jesus Christ as he says that he is. We don't get to decide who he is, but he tells us who he is, and we discuss him based off his own words. Another name for God, or Jesus Christ himself, is the Word. Okay. So, the Word of God just means scriptures of Jesus Christ, okay, of God. So, we, being fishers of men, we gather people in by teaching them, right? We gather people into the fold of God, into the sheep herd of the shepherd. See the literal wording, okay? The good shepherd, the perfect shepherd, Jesus the Christ, God. We teach people things that they don't know that apply to them, and then they know them, okay? You're not going to know something you don't, but if you can learn it, then you can learn it. It's that obvious, right? So it's the title, it's the phrase. Is if I wasn't taught, well, I couldn't be expected to know. And I maybe just don't, and maybe just wouldn't ever know in this life, And so that's the point, is it's in this episode, that's what I'm saying. It's focusing on the end of teaching. You have to. Sometimes we teach people in ways that they think we're proving a point or trying to. Delivering truth, even if it seems like you're trying to convince something, even if it seems to anyone like you're just trying to convince them of something that you believe, that you just want them to get on board with, if it's truth, it's apart from all of us. Truth is something no human being could decide. And so if you're trying to show somebody or teach somebody the truth, even if it seems like it's all about you, it couldn't possibly be. You didn't decide it. You couldn't decide truth. No human being could. You can't just determine what's true and what's not if things are already just there before you even existed. You come into this earth and there's already things going on, and you try to decide how they are happening, and you can't. But what you can do is be taught or just learn how they're happening, right? So if I wasn't taught about what this life was, how would I know? Because you can't decide it. This life's been this life before you were born. You're just one of the 7 billion plus human beings on the earth in 2026, if you're alive in 2026. Well, no, I said 7 billion. I'm pretty sure there's... Yeah, I think that is the number. Yeah, somewhere around 7 billion human beings, give or take, a little over, maybe. I haven't actually been out there counting all of them, okay? But that's what I've been told. Okay, through censuses, they take a measurement of people, they count human beings across the earth. It can't be all that accurate. Okay, that's not an opinion. It couldn't be all that accurate. Trying to count the amount of human beings on the entire planet, so many people that people don't even know exist. How could you? If you haven't been to every single part of the planet, every tribe, as we say in the Gospel of Jesus Christ, right? In the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, every kindred, every nation, kindred, tongue, and people. These are the people that we teach the Gospel of Jesus Christ to. The good news of God is again, the literal translation of that. If you don't know, you don't know. So there you go. That's where the phrase comes in. If I wasn't taught, is that really my fault? Well, no, you can't be held accountable for what you don't know. And if no one ever taught you, how could you know? But that's what I mean. Maybe no other human being directly teaches you something, but God can teach you. God is the truth. And so anything that's just true, anything that's just there and exists, if you learn about it, that's God manifesting himself to you. That's God teaching you in a sense, because truth is just truth. God is the truth, or we could say the truth is God, right? We can label things as God. That sounds blasphemous to some people, but I say it, I say mathematics is God, physics is God, right? Love is God. A lot of times people say God is love. Well, if God is love, that means love is God, right? If God is truth, then that means truth is God. It's on both ends. If it's on either one of them, it can only be true if it's true. So that's what I'm saying, is anything you ever find out in life that's just actually undisputedly and unchanging truth, right? Measurable truth, if you will, like we discussed in that episode I referenced, right? Episode number 200 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, titled Measuring Truth. There's things that you couldn't possibly, dispute. And that's just what truth always is. But some stuff that, there's some stuff out there. There's some things out there that there's no way you could even try to deny. A lot of people want to try to deny truth, and you can try to deny whatever you want, but there's certain things that are just so obviously measurable, right, that is just true. That's what we discussed in that episode, the last one right before this, okay, of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. This is episode 201, man. In the Image Clothing Company podcast, titled If I Wasn't Taught. Because that's the thing, is that's Jesus Christ saying, go be a fisher of men, is go gather people in, teach them things that they need to know so they can come to the truth, right? That's what Jesus Christ was telling Peter when he said, after asking him 3 times, lovest thou me? Or, Peter, do you love me? Even when he already knew the answer was yes. The reason why he was doing that is because what he wanted from Peter, right? To have Peter be able to show Jesus Christ that he loved him, what Jesus Christ asked from him was for him to go teach his children. We're all sons and daughters of Jesus Christ. Him asking Peter to teach his children is like me right now teaching anybody watching episode or just listening only, right? 2 forms of checking out In the Image Clothing Company podcast here. But yeah, to this one, right? Whether you're watching it and listening or just listening to this one here, episode 201 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, titled How Could I... No, it's titled If I Wasn't Taught. You listening to the words I'm saying here, even if you're reading them through subtitles or whatever it is, however you're receiving the words that I'm delivering right now, even if I wasn't speaking them, but I was just writing this down instead, this is me doing what Jesus Christ told Peter to do when he said to feed his sheep. This is me feeding God's sheep. Okay, this is me teaching, is the point. Truth in all my imperfectness, right? This is me doing the best that I can to teach truth. just filming episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, right? Recording audio of episodes of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. This is me feeding God's sheep. This is me making it so we can't ask the question of if I wasn't taught. With the things that I teach here, if you learn from what I've said, then you can't even say, well, if I wasn't taught this, how could I know? It's like, well, Evan Strong spoke some words of stuff he knew pretty well, and now I know those things. Don't just think you know something because I said some words, don't believe me. But if my words align with truth that I couldn't possibly decide because truth is apart from every human being to ever live, the same sense God, okay, truth can't change, human beings can. Okay, so that's what I'm saying. Yeah, don't believe anything I say, ever. But if it aligns with truth, there you go. But yeah, if I wasn't taught anything, how could I teach anyone else anything? But then who really taught me things? Well, if I try to go through each individual thing I know and try to go back into my life to find each individual who taught it to me, that's one thing. But what about all those things that nobody actually directly taught you? How'd you really learn them? Right? That's what I'm saying. I mean, God speaks through anything. He's perfect. And even if we feel like we don't have good people in our lives, like good mentors or leaders to teach us good things, God can teach us. Always. So that's what I mean is, if I wasn't taught, well, then how could I know? But then it's that question, people will say, well, it doesn't matter if I'm going to be taught things or not. The people that are around me are pretty, pretty rough people, man. People that I wouldn't want to learn anything from, even if they wanted to teach me. So, yeah, I don't want anyone to teach me anything. I want to just, learn my own stuff. Well, you got to be taught somehow, even if you're learning your own things. That's not really what's happening. I mean, imagine being an infant baby and just saying, no, nobody teach me anything. I'll just learn it on my own. Well, how do you learn it on your own? You watch what other people do. Even if you personally learn from other people's mistakes are what's teaching you. Do you see what I mean? You are being taught. Even if you think you're self-taught, you're not. I mean, there's a lot of things that I'm self-taught with, but not really. I mean, I learned from something taught me. Even if it wasn't another human being directly teaching me, there was something or some way I got taught how to do everything that I do. And a lot of times that's just God speaking direct when there's nothing else, like as the middleman, if you will. I mean, God will speak how God speaks. He's almighty, And so, yeah, I mean, if I wasn't taught stuff, well, I still learned things. I mean, because that's the point, if you weren't taught there was a better life out there, well, you were still taught the life you were taught. See what I mean? I mean, you can try to claim, no, I'm not trying to like be accusacious. Not for the sake of not sounding mean. I'll sound mean if I sound mean. It's just, that's not really what I'm trying to say. It's not like an accusation right now with this. Sometimes, sure, yeah. Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, surely. Oh, yeah. Just to be clear. But what I'm saying right now is, yeah, you can't really have it be true to say that you were never taught anything. I mean, because even if you were raised and nobody really ever taught you any good things, just about, right? I mean, that's the case, man. That's the case. There's a lot of people who, growing up, like as a child, they basically weren't ever taught. I mean, as close as you could get to not being taught anything good, that some people, yeah, that's the case for. Yeah, oh yeah, man. you can't claim you weren't taught anything. You were taught some pretty terrible ways of living. You know? And so really the question here is, when we ask the question of this episode's title, if I wasn't taught, it's not like if I wasn't taught anything, how could I know anything? Well, that can be the question. We were saying that earlier. Like, well, if you didn't exist, basically nothing else would either. It kind of couldn't. If you weren't taught anything, then you probably don't exist. Probably not. Oh, shoot. I mean, well, the second you get born, you're crying as a baby, let's say, directly or indirectly, intentionally or unintentionally, you're still being taught that when you're crying and somebody like holds you to comfort you, that you're being comforted. Even if they're not like trying to teach you this, it's just you learn it. Anytime you learn something, you've been taught something. You can't learn something without being taught. You see, everything has to have two sides. Well, that's the point, right? That's the point. There's opposition in all things. That's what we say. That's what we get taught. There you go. In the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, in the gospel of Jesus Christ, or the good news of God, in the truth of all things, all opinions aside, and beliefs aside, all perceptions aside, all views aside, there's only light because there's dark on the opposite end. There's only warmth because there's cold on the opposite end. There's only good if we can have an understanding of good, okay, because there's bad if we can have an understanding of bad. See, they're on opposite ends. Like I say, within the human body, there's only one way the human body could ever work. It's no opinion, no claim, but I can show you it. It's just truth. It's undisputed. You just have to know, right? If I wasn't taught, how would I know? But that's yeah. Okay, that's what we're saying. That's what the discussion's about. Because, yeah, but you can pull muscles to close a hinge joint because the opposite is pulling muscles to extend a hinge joint or open it, right? Pulling muscles to close or pulling muscles to open, like the elbow, for example. The biceps are pulling to oppose the triceps pulling, okay? Pulling the biceps closes the elbow, pulling the triceps open the elbow or extend the elbow, okay? There's opposition in all things, and so that's what I'm saying is you're taught even if you're not taught. You know things even if you think you don't know things. Even thinking you don't know something is you knowing something. It's you knowing you think you don't know anything. There's only truth to life. It always exists, and it could never not, or nothing would. Yeah, right? It's always back to truth. It never leaves. It couldn't possibly. It never came. God has always existed. He had to for everything else to be created by him. Okay? There's no religion here to life. There's truth, and he has a name. Okay? The universe has a name, is an episode title of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. The universe's name, if you will, is Jesus Christ. He's just all things, okay? I'm not trying to push something on you, but this is the thing, is if you weren't taught anything about life, you still were taught things about life. You could not be taught. I mean, you couldn't have... There's no possible way you could say that you were never taught anything. You know things. You know at least enough to know that you think you weren't taught as much as someone else. Well, you obviously, maybe we don't use the word obviously, but it's kind of obviously. The point is you'd have to at least know that somebody else knows more about something than you do if you think you weren't taught as much as they were. Well, you were taught enough to know that someone else knows more than you, right? That's the thing with this, is if I wasn't taught, then what? Because, man, we a lot of times we think we weren't taught things that we were taught, Growing up, for example, me personally, back to, a little bit of my own experience, there was so much that I was taught as a child, and a lot of it was wrong. And so then this is like an understanding of truth, right? It's like, well, if you were taught something that wasn't true, then what makes something true? Well, the truth is I was taught things that weren't actually correct. Okay, there's still truth always. It doesn't matter. What you teach somebody or what you learn, the truth is you taught somebody or you learned something. What you could have taught somebody or learned might have been untrue. Do you see what I mean? What I'm saying is, yeah, if you weren't taught anything, you basically wouldn't exist. You'd still be that infant baby, because we're taught things even if they're wrong. Because you kind of have to just be literal with the wording. You can say, I wasn't taught how to do this correct if you were doing something wrong, but the truth is you were taught how to do it incorrectly then, right? If someone's getting after you for doing something in a way that's not the best way to do it, you can say, well, I wasn't taught how to do it properly. But you can't say that you weren't taught. Because if you were doing it at all and someone taught you how to do it wrong, you were taught. But you were taught wrong. And then it's like, well, where's the truth then? How do we really know? Well, it's like math. That's what I mean. Math is truth, or math is God. Yikes. It's not blasphemy. That's how it is. Math is undisputed. You do a math equation anywhere, and it's the same everywhere, or anywhere, and always. It'll never change. It's math. It's universal. Actually, not the way that people say that certain beliefs are universal until they don't work for you. No, it's not universal then. There's only things universal, or they're not. There's only things true, or they're not. You're either taught how to do something correct, or you don't know how to do it correct. Okay? What I'm saying with math is there's only a right way to do a math equation to get the right answer. There's truth only. Yeah, right? That's what I mean. Math is one of those things that you can measure truth with. You figure out something, and you do a math equation. Somebody can teach you how to do math wrong. Because there's truth to how to do math right. You see what I mean? So it's like, well, if I wasn't taught how to do math right, well, then you probably were taught how to do it wrong if you've been doing it and it just didn't work correct. What I'm saying is a lot of times we're still taught how to do things even if we're just taught wrong. So we can think we were never taught anything in life. You can go through life and be like, man, well, what if I was never taught how to do this? You probably were. Whether it was somebody teaching you how to do it personally, or you were just watching people do it and you learned from that, you were being taught by other people doing something. It's like dogs. I discuss being the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, Evan Strong, me, the man speaking. 1/4 of In the Image Clothing Company being In the Image Clothing Company Poodles. We discuss, under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles, how dogs are pack animals. And you, as the owner of the dog, have to be, in the dog's eyes, the alpha dog, or the leader dog, or they're not going to listen to you. What dogs do, though, is they learn from each other by watching. That's what I've said. Dante the Advocate, why I say that, well, there's a lot of reasons, but one of the big things is Dante is such a good, well-behaved dog. He'll be able to teach a lot of our other dogs under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles by them just being around him. And even if he's not intentionally, looking the other dogs in the eyes and, spelling out for them how to do something, it's not like he's actually trying to teach them. The other dogs are being taught by watching Dante. They learn from experience. They learn from watching. They learn from the good and the bad. That's what I mean. We learn from people in our lives doing good things, how to do good things. Even if they're not teaching us, we watch them do good things and then we know how to do it because we learned from them. We got taught by watching them. They didn't teach us, but we did get taught. See what I mean? That's how it works in life. That's what I mean, is even if you think you were never taught anything, how else do you know anything? It's what what I was saying earlier about the dogs, or that one person in a family, you have a view on something. What I was saying is, let's say you were never taught that dogs could be really good, or you were never taught that the rest of the family was really good just because one person in it wasn't good, or just because you had an experience with one dog that wasn't good. Well, you were still taught. You were taught what you know. What you currently know is what you know. And that's what's crazy, is we can know things that are wrong. It's so weird. It's just truth is truth. It's just life, man. You can know things that are wrong. You can hear somebody make up a bunch of stories, and you can know their stories. You could say their stories word for word, and their stories are made up. You can know something that is wrong, right? Don't agree with me. I'm just saying, like, right? Like, can you see that? You can. I mean, I could sit here and I could tell you an hour-long story, pretending that something happened that never did. I could just make up something on the spot, and you could memorize every word in my story, and you know my story at that point because you were taught it. And it's wrong. That's why I say don't believe in anything. It doesn't matter. You listen to a pastor, a bishop, a priest. You listen to anyone ever, and they could seem like the best person on the planet, and they might be. If we could actually measure it, they might be the best person on the planet, like the most righteous person or whatever. Y'all too righteous for church, man. Too righteous for church is an episode title of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. But yeah, I mean, you could have literally actually the most righteous, meaning like the best person, the most loving, kind, honest, truthful person on the planet, and they could just not know something correct. And they could be saying something they thought they were right about, and they could be wrong. But you could know it, what they've said to you, right? I mean, you could. You could know it. You could memorize it word for word. You could be taught their story that's entirely wrong. So that's what I mean. You can't ever claim you weren't taught anything. What you're trying to say in that moment, and I've said similar things in my life too. I'm like, I really wasn't taught anything growing up, man. How everyone out there that I've seen, I'm not even going to finish that because you can say whatever you want. But that's what I mean. I used to say often phrases like that. Like, I just really wasn't taught anything in life growing up. I just wasn't, But the truth is, I was taught a lot of false truths. I was taught a lot of terrible things that were not correct. I was taught a lot of opinions and beliefs. I was taught who I was, which is impossible. You're who you are. You can't be taught who you are. You're just who you are. God created you. You didn't create yourself. You don't get to be taught by someone else who also didn't create you who you are. You can't even teach yourself who you are. See what I mean? That's the whole thing. If I wasn't taught, well, you'd still exist. See what I mean? But also, if you think you weren't taught stuff, you're wrong. But you could have been taught a lot of things that were wrong. Maybe you weren't taught the truth, but you might have been taught a lot of lies. Okay? That's what I was saying with the dogs, Maybe you weren't taught that dogs can be really, really good, more obedient, and more respectful than a lot of human beings. But maybe what you were taught is a belief that dogs can only be bad. Okay? Because you can be taught and not be taught the truth. There's only truth. There's no opinion to truth. But you can teach anyone anything. I mean, picture like telling a kid a bedtime story. You can tell any kind of story you want. You can make up some crazy elaborate story. Or like all these things about like, these campfire stories, if you will. Like you're up there in the mountains or out in the desert or wherever you are, anywhere on the earth, and someone's just like telling some spooky campfire story, for example. They'll teach you all sorts of things that aren't true. They'll make up stuff to scare you. You can't claim you weren't taught anything if you got taught something wrong. A lot of times that's what we do. We kind of make statements that just aren't quite true. And that's like a silly elementary school rhyme. That's funny. No, but we do, I'll finish that, but let's say this real quick. In the Image Clothing Company Music is another fourth of In the Image Clothing Company. On the main side of In the Image Clothing Company, when we discuss the anatomy of the human body in depth and just show how it is, because every body has one, or every one has a body. What we do under In the Image Clothing Company truly is universal. Don't believe it, so you can find out the truth for yourself. Okay, that's what I'm saying. Truth is truth, no matter who teaches you what. No one teaches you anything, and you'll be taught by experience. Okay? Oh, shoot. The Spirit of God brings all things to our remembrance, right? Yeah, shoot. Anyway. It's one of those times I get so uncomfortable in a good way. There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Remember, Remember. And when God says something twice, like he does with the word remember, he's being, extra real with it. God doesn't say anything he doesn't mean. God never says anything incorrect. God is the truth. So if he says something twice in a row, it's a big deal. He says, remember, remember. Anyway, God's just trying to get us to remember things that we forgot, because we just kind of have to be taught some things that we already knew, if you will. Ah, shoot. Oh, shoot. Ah, shoot. If I wasn't taught. Ah, shoot. Anyway, we show the sizing and setup of guitar to not alter the body. Under In the Image Clothing Company Music, we do a lot with lyricism, rhythm and poetry, spoken word, singing, guitar playing, and whatever else we get into with music geared around the gospel of Jesus Christ with the messages. Okay. Fingernails and toenails, man. I've got dirt under mine right now. Fingernails and toenails, they've got to be cut relatively flat. Don't let me tell you something, but there is a neutral, right? To the wrist, for example, and to the gripped arch in the foot. Rotations in the body from internal rotation and external rotation. There's a neutral. You notice how I had a harder time speaking when I said external rotation? Because I rotated my forearm from my fingertips up to my elbow externally with those two bones in the forearm, the radius and ulna. And the body works the best the closer to its own center line, which is internal rotation. Okay, the sternum, the spine, the trachea, the nose, and our jaw, these are center pieces, if you will, to the human body on Earth's centered gravity pole. We have feet at the base of our bodies opposing the center line and gripping arches inward to keep us vertical. Okay, a lot of what it is just dealing with gravity as human beings. There truly is only one way the human body could ever work. There's a center to gravity, There's opposing bends in the body from the feet up to the top of the body, which is really the fingertips, not the head. Okay, the ankles bend backward, so the knees can bend forward, so the hips can bend backward, so the lower back can bend forward, the mid back can bend backward, and then the neck, which is really the upper back, it can bend forward. These have to be equal opposing bends vertically because Earth has a centered gravity pull. It's undisputed. It's mathematics, physics, mechanics. There is only one way the human body could ever work. That's what we do under In the Image Clothing Company's main side. Really, what we do with that is get out of chronic patterning through scar tissue and bone spurs getting built up in this right-handed, especially world we live in. 85%, give or take, of human beings are right-handed. So we get into a patterning with our bodies rotated more externally on the right side, and that just drops the body lower and farther away from its center line just because of the muscles that do internal versus external rotation and pivoting on things like the collarbone from the center line at the sternum up and out to the peak of the edge of the shoulder. As it drops down and out, the body goes into external rotation. As it comes up and in, the body goes into internal rotation. It's undisputed. It's just what it is. The human body. Okay, so what I'm saying is whatever I'm saying. And that's what I was saying, is oversized clothing, imbalances in clothing of any kind of imbalance that could possibly be there when the body only has one way it could ever work. There's two sides to it that have to just evenly oppose the center line, okay? Ropes introduced to the body like shoelaces or drawstrings. Our bodies get into chronic patterning, trying to work around these things, okay, for years at a time, decades, an entire lifetime just about, well, an entire lifetime for a lot of people, but if we can catch it before you die, then we can do what we can do to get out of chronic patterning within our own situations. Doesn't matter what age you are, okay? Nah. So what I'm saying is, that, okay, that's about all I'm saying with that right now. That's what we really do, okay? That's the reason for clothing, anything that clothes the human being, even glasses, jewelry, anything placed onto the body at all. It's placed onto your body, okay? It's clothing your body with something. It's just literal wording. We just don't understand that sometimes, that words only mean what words mean. Dante's so relaxed. That's awesome. That's the goal. Okay, the goal is natural on all four sides of In the Image Clothing Company. And with letting dogs stay natural on In the Image Clothing Company Poodles, you can look at our dogs. We do all that we can to speak out of personal experience. Look at our dogs. Okay, just going forth. And well, right now, Dante's our first poodle under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles. That's what I mean. You can see the truth. We discuss in the Gospel of Jesus Christ, how do you know what's good and what's not good? Well, good things can't bear bad fruit, and bad things can't bear good fruit. A corrupt tree can't produce good fruit, and a good tree can't produce corrupt fruit. The fruits of your labor, meaning you put in work, and what comes from it. You can put in work, and some terrible things can come from it. It doesn't really matter what work you did. But if the work you put in produces things that are good, well, it has to be good. You can't get good things from not good things. That just doesn't happen. It just doesn't. So that's what I'm saying. You can watch my body, as I've said. This is a good thing to say. I don't know. I don't want to talk about myself. I don't usually care to, but you can. You can watch me, Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. You can watch my body's visual and physical workings, its transformation from any most. Yeah, I should say it. I feel. I should say this as often as I need to, right? But yeah, you can go back to the founding date, the 23rd of September, 2024. Watch my body under the gift of video is the point. Just how it looks, how it works, physically, mechanically, how it can operate, with allowing the body to work being our slogan on the main side of In the Image Clothing Company. And compare that to any most current date you can find, and just see how my body has changed, or just watch the journey. I mean, that's a lot of what we are able to do with the gift of video. It's advertisement in a sense for what we do. It's undisputed. How else could I be doing it? Something's got to be working, if something's working. That's what I mean. Something's got to be good. If you've got good fruit, you can't just come from evil. Look at my dog. Well, that's what I mean. Look at Dante. You can even watch Dante's transformation to the degree of what you can tell personally from when I first adopted him about 3+ weeks ago from today's date to any current date or most current date. It's just natural. His body just works because I do what's needed for that to be the case as his owner. And as the founder of In the Image Clothing Company is really how that's able to happen. That's where I'm coming from is that understanding, okay, that I have. So what I'm saying though is, yeah, if you weren't taught, right, or if I wasn't taught is the question, then how could I know anything? And we've got a lot of themes like this under In the Image Clothing Company. We're just discussing truth. We're discussing ignorance, which is just the not knowing. We discuss yeah, I mean, just progression through life, through understandings. I mean, you can ask yourself this question, though. The same question, but like this. If I wasn't taught, how am I where I am today? You know more things than you did at one point. And if you try to claim that nobody ever taught you anything, you're wrong. I mean, maybe not that many human beings taught you very much at all. That could be the case. But God taught you. You still got taught through watching other people's experiences, because that's not you teaching yourself. That's other people's experiences teaching you. You're just observing and allowing the learning to happen. That's what I mean. We can't actually take credit for anything. You never could learn anything if you weren't taught. That's why it's so weird. It's like, truth is truth. It has to be. You claim you weren't taught anything, let's say. Again, it's that's not an accusations thing, but well, personally, I've claimed that, if you will. Like I was saying, I used to say I just wasn't really taught anything growing up. Well, then how do you know anything? How do you even know that you don't know things if you don't know things? Right? Is maybe you've been taught by other people's understandings. You go through life and you see that other people understand things that you don't really understand that well yet. And that's teaching you that you don't know as much as they do. So you were just taught by comparison. Not an unhealthy kind of comparison, but just, comparing your knowledge versus other people's knowledge, just to, see who knows what, just as a true side-by-side comparison, just to see. That's you being taught. Walk around in life. Well, I mean, check this out, right? That's the point. You walk around in life and you see people who are in a bigger group of friends than you have. You just got taught that you are not in as big of a group of friends as those other people. That's what I mean. Is you were taught. You can't say if I wasn't taught, blah, blah, blah. You're being taught all the time. Even if no one's actually intentionally teaching you. Experience teaches you. God teaches you. Even if you don't think he does. That's what I mean. Truth is truth no matter what. I mean, you go through life and you learn things even if no one ever directly teaches you anything. You're still learning stuff. Even you saying you don't know as much as someone else, man. How did you learn that then? Who taught you that? Who taught you don't know as much as someone else, right? I mean, someone could ask you that question. It's like, well, and then whatever the answer you could say is, the truth is you got taught by something, So what I'm saying is, we can ask the question, like, someone could ask, I guess, like, if I wasn't taught that there could be really, really great, well-behaved dogs like Dante, then how could I know? Well, really the thing is, if you weren't taught what you were taught about dogs being destructive and disobedient and loud, drooly, barky, snarly, whatever you want to put label-wise on a dog, shedding fur all over the place. If you weren't taught all that, you wouldn't know anything about dogs. If that's all you know about dogs, And that's the thing, is that's the truth about some dogs. That's not the truth about all dogs. And if you think that's the truth about all dogs, you got taught something wrong. But you got taught something right if you got taught that that's the truth about some dogs. This is the whole thing about life. It's not just... It's not simple, but it's simple. It's not easy, but it's easy. It's not hard, but it's hard. It's just life. That's the thing is, well, because I say often, life isn't easy, but it's simple, but it's kind of like saying, well, sort of like this, you don't only get taught things and then they're true, but you can get taught things that are untrue. Life can be extremely simple, and that doesn't mean easy. But sometimes people think that if something's simple, that means it's easy. You can get taught something, and that doesn't mean you know the truth. And a lot of times people think if you get taught something, you know it. And it's true. You can know all sorts of lies. You can go through life and get taught all the gossip out there. You can claim you don't know anything. Maybe you don't know what's actually true about all the gossip that's been spoken, but you know way more than you need to. You were taught. You're just taught wrong. You see what I mean? That's the problem. It's not that we weren't taught things in life if we feel like we weren't. It's that a lot of times we get taught things we don't need to know. We get taught things that are entirely wrong. We get taught things that are entirely damaging. And that's why I keep saying it's sometimes it's like we're just trying to claim it. That's why it sounds like an accusation. It kind of is, and in a good way. It's like, if you're trying to claim you weren't taught, no, you were taught. You just shouldn't have been taught what you were taught if the goal was to get to the truth. Do you see what I mean? That's the whole thing. It kind of is an accusation. Because at the same time, it's like, no matter what I was taught growing up that was wrong, well, it taught me a lot. There's layers to things. The false truths or wrong things you got taught you lessons. So not only did you get taught things that were wrong, but being told and taught things that are wrong taught you lessons on how to discern from things that are right and things that are wrong. You can teach anybody anything ever. I mean, you can learn more than someone else out there and not actually know anything true. I mean, hear this correct, because this is literal crazy talk. Possible, though, okay? Crazy. Possible. Truth. This is truth. It's crazy, because somebody could literally be taught nothing but lies. That's what I mean is, if you weren't taught anything, you probably wouldn't even really exist. Because how could you not be taught anything? It's kind of an invalid question, the title of this. If I wasn't taught, well, it's like you were taught. Might have been wrong, but you were taught something. I mean, if you're having that question, if you're asking someone like, yeah, if you're asking someone that question, well, you learn something. You learn how to ask that question. Like, you know what I'm saying? I'm just saying, like, it is a possibility for somebody to go their entire life and never know anything true. You could teach. Let's get real with this. This is literally crazyville, because that's real. That's a possibility. Somebody could go their entire life and never know anything that was actually accurate, but they could have been taught a lot of things. You could possibly have an entire life that was just lies. Nothing but lies. Not a single truth. And so then you're pleading for universal truth. Anybody out there who doesn't think there's universal truth and thinks they could just decide what's true and they're just delusional, well, you'd be pleading for truth. If you lived an entire life where you were taught nothing but lies, I mean, let's say you were taught and taught and taught and educated and educated and educated in nothing but lies. You'd be pleading for universal truth. You'd be in a crazy land. You'd be in Neverland, man, because you're just never going to land. You're just out there floating in all these beliefs that don't exist. then you could ask the question, if I was never taught, how would I know anything? I don't know. I mean, you can ask it on both ends, because at that point you could say, well, I know so much. And if I was never taught, I wouldn't know this much. But let's say you got taught nothing but lies. It's like, well, it doesn't matter what you were taught. It's not true. And someone could just know a few things on how to discern from truth and lies. And not be taught just about anything in life, besides just know how to discern. Doesn't matter what else you get taught. There's only truth. I mean, that's the whole point. It's better to not know. And I've said I've said this many times under In the Image Clothing Company podcast. There's so much to learn in life, and you'll never know it all. No matter who thinks they know it all, you're lying to yourself and God. And no one's going to believe that unless they're delusional. All of a sudden, I'm just like throwing out all these accusations. It just is what it is. That's the point. It's truth. Truth is truth. The truth is you're never going to know everything in life. And as I've said so many times here, and it just is the case, it's not because I say it. It doesn't matter what I say. Don't believe me. But what I say, truly, right? It's better to not know most things out there that you could learn. You could be taught everything there could possibly be made up, you know. You can make up everything you could possibly make up and teach it to someone. And they were taught. They can't claim they weren't taught. But they don't know anything that's real. See what I mean? This is life, dude. This is all opinions aside. What if you never learned an opinion? See what I mean? I mean, there's only truth. That's it. That's all that exists. That's all that could possibly exist. Otherwise, you're going to be pleading for it, too. Because you were taught nothing but lies, let's say. And then you really weren't taught anything. Not really. You were fed a bunch of garbage. What are you going to do with it? You know, we talked about eating naturally under In the Image Clothing Company's main side. I say it, you know, if you eat anything unnatural, artificial, synthetic, you know, these words are synonyms with fake. It's just like how you can be taught fake things. And you got taught, it didn't do anything for you. You know, you eat something unnatural, you ate something, it didn't do anything for you. You can eat anything you want that's unnatural, meaning made by mankind. There's no such thing as unnatural until human beings made it. Yeah, you eat anything unnatural, it just damages your body. It gets processed through you, and it takes effort for your body to do that, but your body can't extract any nutrients that are beneficial. It only damages you. It's like being taught everything that you could ever be taught that was just a lie. Every lie that could ever possibly be made up, someone could teach you. Doesn't do anything for you. It's just like eating empty calories, in a sense, or eating unnatural things, even more so than just eating empty calories. Well, that's very similar, though, but yeah, pretty much the same thing, actually. But yeah, I mean, right, you eat something that your body can't actually take anything from to benefit, but your body has to process it through it. It's the same thing as... It's the same thing, or it's just as damaging, if you will, as being taught everything you could ever possibly make up. Oh, you were taught. But it was only damaging. Would have been better for you to not be taught. Right? It'd be better for you to not eat something artificial or fake. Right? That's so crazy. It's as real as it gets. That's as real as it gets. I'm going to say it again. I'm going to just start the sentence over just to say it thorough. You know, it would be better for you to not eat anything synthetic, unnatural, artificial, or fake, right? Which those are all just synonyms for the word fake, meaning the same thing as the word fake, than to eat something fake because it'll damage your body. You know, if you have the option of like not eating anything until you can get to some real food, even though you're really, really hungry, or eating something that's like fake yeah. To kind of like hold you over until you get to something real. No. Your body will be more damaged by eating something unnatural than just by not eating anything at all. Okay, that's what I mean with the whole the title, man. If I wasn't taught, well, if you weren't taught anything untrue or anything fake, that'd be better than being taught everything you could ever possibly be taught if it wasn't even true. You know, it'd be better for you to literally not know anything ever than to be taught things that just aren't accurate. That's the truth, man. Well, and who's to say? Well, the truth is to say. The truth is God. That's a name for God. God is to say. That's what I mean. You'll be doing nothing but pleading for God. Even if you were never taught about him. I mean, it's like people who, they claim they don't want to live anymore. And, you toss them overboard or whatever, and they'll just be pleading and pleading and pleading for you to save their life. Toss them overboard, meaning like you're on a boat in the ocean, and you throw them over in the water, and they're either going to die or you're going to rescue them, even if they claim they wanted to die. Almost every single case ever, people will plead and plead and plead to be saved. Even if you don't believe in God, or even if it's on the other end and you just really think that there's no God that could exist. If you get in a really desperate situation, in most every case, at least, I can't speak for everyone. I really can't speak for anyone else. I can't even really speak for myself ever, just to be transparent. I'm not trying to speak for anyone, but in almost every single case, I mean, you can do it. You can you can have it happen. You can take a statistic of it. Don't believe me on anything ever. Ever. I mean, it just gets so loud when I, want to. So there you go. Just want to hit the point. Don't believe me. Ever. Okay? Or anyone. And truth has to still exist. What I'm saying, though, is people, yeah, if you don't believe in God, and even go so far to be on the other end, go so far, just meaning so far on the other end, there's just sides to things, right? To saying that you believe there is no God. So strongly do you believe that there is no God. That's fine. Believe it all you want. If it came to it and there was a situation where you couldn't call on anyone to help you, but you just really needed help, you'd probably be pleading out for God to save you, even if you don't believe in him. I mean, who else are you going to plead for, when you can't do something on your own yeah, right? What I'm saying is, even if you were never taught there was a God, right? Because you can say that, like, if I was never taught there was a God, how am I going to know who to call on? Or how am I going to know who to plead to? Well, what about when you're entirely alone? You're still kind of just like hoping and pleading and wishing that someone could save you. Well, that's God. He's the universal. You never taught who God was. He's still there. Man. Yeah, if you were never taught anything, you're still there. I mean, if I wasn't taught, right? I mean, that question is just so cool because it kind of wouldn't matter. You'd still know something. If I wasn't taught. I mean, comparison, not like unhealthy comparison, like comparing yourself to others, but just comparing, like compare and contrast, if you will. Like looking at something and seeing how it's different than something else. Or looking at other people and seeing how they're different than you. In a way of just seeing the differences, just to see the differences because they're there. That's you being taught something. Like I was saying earlier. I mean, that's the point. We're always being taught. Even if we don't really understand how to label who the teacher is in the moment, that's what I mean. God is teaching everything. Always. God's the teacher who never has a sick day or a substitute. God never stops working. That's what I mean. God is always orchestrating everything that's happening, or things wouldn't be happening. How are things just happening by themselves? Well, what's themselves, That's what I mean. If they didn't exist, what would? That's what I was saying. If you didn't exist, nothing else could. We can say, well, everything is just doing its thing. What if it didn't? Then what? What's left? And how could there be anything left? What's really happening? There has to be truth. You can't just have an opinion and have it matter. Ever. Not me either. Never. It couldn't happen. It couldn't matter to have an opinion. Never. That is impossible. That's what I'm saying. Just, if you weren't taught, you still know stuff, which means you had to be taught because you came into this world not knowing anything. We were taught. You can't even say, if I wasn't taught and then have anything like, how could you expect me to know? Or how could I have done it better? Well, if you did it at all, you were taught something. You either don't do anything or you do something. If you're doing something, you were taught that you could do something, at least. We were taught. We always have to be taught if we exist. I mean, your heart got taught how to beat because it's beating or you're not alive. Your lungs got taught how to breathe because you're breathing or you're not alive. You were taught. You may not realize it, and you may not know how to label who your teacher was. But I'll tell you, and don't believe me, his name is Jesus Christ. It is God. He is the teacher of all. You were taught. You couldn't claim you're not taught. Or you weren't taught. You couldn't claim it. You could not claim you weren't taught. Right? You could not claim that you weren't taught what a dog is. You know what you know about what a dog is. You might know something that's incorrect, but you know something. You were taught. Or you couldn't even tell me anything about it. If someone says like, no, dogs, they're only this. Well, you were taught that. It's like, well, I never really was taught much about dogs. But what I know about dogs is, well, no, then you were taught something. If you know something about it, you were taught. Do you see? This can be anything ever. Well, like the family situation I was saying, there's one person in the family, just any family, that is like a pretty not so great person to be around in their current state of being. You can't claim that you weren't taught how to, whatever. I mean, or somebody, well, because this is the point, is somebody, this is the point. This is it. This is the point. You can't claim, man, you can't claim you weren't taught anything about something because maybe there is someone out there that's just like having some pretty bad behavior. And you're just saying, well, I just don't want to be around that person. Man, it's so weird. You were always taught. You were always taught. Because if you don't want to be around that person, you were taught a reason why not. But man, that's a big point. A lot of times people have behaviors and act certain ways because of certain things that we just don't know. So you can say, well, I was never taught that person has like a condition, like a health condition, a mental condition that causes them to act a certain way. And maybe you just thought like, well, I just thought they acted that way just because. I was never taught they had a condition. Well, they do act that way just because. That's how they act. Regardless of the reasoning why, that's just how they act. So you were taught. You were taught that's how they act. You can't claim like, well, I wasn't taught that they had a condition that caused them to be like that. Well, if they had a condition or not, they're still the same human being. They're still acting the same way that they're acting. If they're acting that way. Things are only what they are, even if you know them or not. Things are only what they are, even if you have been taught that they're not what they are. They're still only what they are. You can never claim you weren't taught. Because even in you saying that, there's something you're discussing that you know. You can't say like, I wasn't taught that this was this and this and this. Well, what were you taught about it then? You were always taught or you wouldn't know anything. I mean, it's just as real as it gets, dude. I mean, when you get to truth and it's like there's no words to put on it anymore. Yeah. You know, I mean, because you can say something is just something you've always stayed away from, and someone's like, well, why? And you say, well, because no one ever taught me it wasn't so bad. Well, someone taught you that it was bad then, even if it wasn't bad. Do you see how this is on both ends? I'm just trying to give this. I'm not trying. I'm giving it, but I'm just. Yeah, we're giving it. We're just doing this. This is good because you're always taught. You're always taught. Always. Maybe you were taught to stay away from something, and maybe there was no need to stay away from it. You could say, "Well, I was never taught that it was a good thing. I didn't know. I thought it was something bad." Well, because you were taught it was something bad. You can say you were never taught the truth about a certain thing, and that can be valid. Okay, that's why we feed God's sheep, like Simon Peter. Yeah, dude. I mean, yeah, if you are scared of something, you can't claim like, well, like if someone hypothetically says this, right? I was scared of it because I was never taught what it was. That's not true. You were scared of it because you were taught that it was something that you're afraid of, or you wouldn't be scared of it. There's nothing to be scared of if nothing exists. The only way you could possibly be scared of nothing existing is if you knew that stuff existed. There has to be an opposition. You couldn't possibly be afraid of emptiness unless you were taught that things can be full. This is what I mean. There's opposition in all things or nothing could possibly exist. Even a belief, even a thought, even truth, it couldn't exist without lies. It would be impossible. It would be impossible for God to not exist because if anything exists, it's there. And God is, or God is the truth. And if something's there, it's there, and that's the truth. Otherwise, it's not there, and that's the truth. There's still truth. It always exists. And so you are taught. You've always been taught. Everything you are is you being taught. The cells in your body are taught how to work. The DNA in your body's taught how to, strand itself together. Yeah, right? That's what I was saying. Your heart's taught how to beat. Your lungs are taught how to breathe. The point is, really, with this episode is it's an invalid question. If I wasn't taught, meaning like, if you're using it like, well, how do you expect me to know if I wasn't taught? Well, it's not that we're expecting people to know, but if you have a view on something that's wrong, you can't say, well, I wasn't taught about it. No, you were taught. You were taught the view you have, or you wouldn't have it. You were taught. It's impossible to claim otherwise and have it be valid. You can claim whatever you want, even if no one taught you that you could. Do you see what I'm saying? It always comes back to truth, man. There's nothing else besides truth. And we are being taught, always. Even if nobody ever spoke to you directly, you could learn another language. Well, that's a good point. Babies, don't get taught English, if you're speaking English, or they don't get taught Spanish if you're speaking Spanish, or Portuguese if you're speaking Portuguese, whatever language it could be on the entire planet ever, any time period. Reformed Egyptian in the Book of Mormon, okay? Truly. Any language to ever exist. That's what I mean. Babies don't get taught how to speak. Not really. Sometimes you're like, can you say mama? Can you say dada? Like trying to teach them mom and dad, mother and father, if you will. Sometimes you kind of teach babies a few words, but really the way that babies and little kids learn how to speak is by listening to other human beings speak. The majority of little children, this is the truth. The majority of little children's speech is not directly taught to them, but they learn it by listening to other people speak to other people, and that is teaching them. So they are being taught how to speak, but not in a direct way, the way that we would sit there and say, all right, so this is a letter, this is a vowel, this is a consonant, you put them together like this is how you speak, try this, and then they say it. No, I mean, for very few words that happens, but it's the way that you can go immerse yourself in a different country or a different part of the earth, continent, wherever, right, different part of the planet, or even in the same part of the planet, but just in an environment where they speak a different language that you don't know how to speak yet. They don't have to teach you the language, but you are taught how to speak it by just listening to others speak to each other in a language you don't know yet. You get taught, even if no one's actually directly teaching you. Do you see how that works? You are taught. You're always taught. You're always taught by experience, even if you don't feel like you have experiences. This is life, dude. You are taught. You have been taught. We talk about people not being learned or learned. Like Joseph Smith, the one who translated the Book of Mormon, the key cornerstone to the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. The Book of Mormon is the thing, man. It's the truth, by the way. Don't believe me. Read it. You can have all the opinions you want on something you don't know anything about. But that's the point. Even if you weren't taught what the Book of Mormon is, if you got an opinion on it, you were taught something. You were taught the opinion you have on it. Do you see what I'm saying? We were always taught. If you know anything, or you literally don't know anything at all. If there's anything you know whatsoever, you were taught. Oh, this is such a beautiful episode discussion, man. That's amazing. But Joseph Smith, who translated the Book of Mormon, he did it through the power of God because he wasn't learned, if you will. He didn't have like a full education, okay? He couldn't even read or write very well at all. And I don't know to what degree exactly. Maybe he couldn't even do one or the other at all. I don't want to say it as it is, as if I know exactly, but I do know that much. He wasn't very, very good at it. Even after translating the Book of Mormon, he was still misspelling words in his daily life. When he was writing, he wasn't very learned or learned, but he was still extremely smart, just as a human being. And then God still worked through him. What I'm saying is, no matter how much you think you've learned, yeah, that's a point. A lot of people haven't really learned very much in life, but they know a lot because they've been taught through experiences of others, experiences of their own, even if they weren't directly taught that much. I mean, there's some people, man, who have never been to any kind of schooling in life, and they're just so good at stuff. You can say they were never taught how to do anything by someone else, but then how do they know how to do it? You can just never claim you weren't taught. I mean, we can look at it like this. There's a lot of... Man, you want to be very careful. I'm going to finish saying what I was saying there, but this is how I'm going to go into it. You want to be very careful about who you spend your time with and around. You kind of just become those people you spend the time around. Even if you don't want to, or, it's not your decision to, that's what I'm saying. You're still being taught by the influence of others. Man, I made a lyric, I don't even know what to say. Oh, shoot. I made this thing, man, one time. It was like a spoken word thing. Because I used to make rap songs and produce them, put my words that I recorded with other people's beats. I couldn't really do anything with them at the time because I didn't own the beats of other people. Now I just make my own music, and I don't use other people's beats. Not that I won't ever do that or that you can't. Anyway, the point is, yeah, as of right now, I play guitar now, and so I've got music to back my words. I am a rapper, like literally. Okay, I'm a lyricist. I'm really good with words. I made this thing and I called it Influence or The Influence, something like that. Oh man, like 6 to 7 years ago, give or take. Yeah, I was like 19 or 20 years old at the time, give or take. I probably was like 19 years old. But that's the point. We're always learning from the influence of others. Other people doing things influences us, and that is us being taught. So yeah, when we spend our time around people that really aren't doing the best things, well, that's not great. Let me word it like this again. You want to be very careful about who you spend your time with. If you have any say over it at all, try to be very careful to not spend your time with or around people that are doing things that aren't producing good fruit. There you go. That's what I'm saying, right? That's the point. It's the fruits of the labor. People are doing labor that is producing pretty evil fruit. Don't be around those people. Okay? If you can help it. Okay? Do all you can to not be around people that are not doing things. Yeah. That align with what you know to be beneficial. I mean, let's say it like that. So we don't even use the word good or bad, right? Things that don't produce benefit in a healthy way for your life. There you go. Company for company's sake, an episode title of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. There you go. That's what I'm saying. Don't be around people just to be around people, because you're learning stuff even if you're not being taught. It's what I was saying about Dante. That's where I was getting into this, where we learn from example, but we learn from the bad examples. Even if we're not putting labels on it, good or bad, we learn from unhealthy examples. There's truth to health versus unhealthiness. Okay, people who are unhealthy die, right? Quicker and easier, and for the reasons that they do because they're unhealthy. Then on the other end, people who are healthy, they don't die for reasons of being unhealthy because they're not unhealthy. In the ways that we can actually measure that, right? Measuring truth. That's what I'm saying. There's truth only. Okay? It's undisputed. And what I'm saying is, we're taught by the influence of others. And so, sometimes parents don't want their kids to be around other kids, even if the kids they don't want them to be around aren't teaching them bad things. Like trying to say, like, look, let me teach you how to do this thing. It's so cool, man. Your parents wouldn't like it, but this is what the cool kids are doing, right? Hint, hint, wink, wink. I mean, that's like the stereotypical, like, you teaching someone something that, all the cool kids are doing. If you want to be cool, do what we do. But they're like breaking the rules, right? Anyway, I mean, this is the same every generation of human beings to ever be. It's always been like that. It always will be. That kind of influence of Satan, of the Antichrist, of the devil himself, right? There's opposition in all things. There's only things producing good fruit because things can produce evil fruit. But even if someone's not actually teaching you to do bad things, like intentionally trying to teach you how to do bad things, being around other people who are just not doing, even if we take the word bad out of it so you can just see the truth, right? Unhealthy things. Being around people with unhealthy habits, that is teaching you those unhealthy habits. You are being taught, if we can phrase it like that, to go along with the title, right? With the title being, If I Wasn't Taught. It's like, if I wasn't taught good habits, how would I know anything then? Well, you were taught bad habits, even if you think you weren't. If you're doing them, you were taught them, is the point. Being around people, even if they didn't teach you how to do these things, you're just around it, you're influenced by it, that influence is teaching you, okay? And so, right, people being around rowdy, disobedient, terrible dogs, because there are some terrible dogs out there. You are being taught what it means to see a terrible dog's behavior, even if no one's trying to like sit there and talk to you about it and like teach you directly, right? So maybe you just don't know that there's good dogs. Being in an environment growing up where it's just some really ridiculously unhealthy dynamic of family, dynamic of relationship of any kind, and just behaviors going on that are just really unhealthy. That's the thing. Take out the word good and take out the word bad so you don't think I'm trying to teach you something that I believe. Some people don't even believe there's universal good or universal bad. If you don't believe there's universal truth, well, you don't need to believe in anything. But if you don't think there's universal truth, then yeah, how could there be universal good or bad at that point? Well, there's universal healthy and universal unhealthy. There is, when you get down to it, there has to be, because the human body only works the way it does, but there's your universal truth. You didn't design your body. You can't decide how it works. That's the truth. You'd be nothing but delusional if you tried to claim you designed your own body. So what I'm saying is, we learn things even if we weren't taught. You were taught. You can't learn something unless you're taught. Even if nobody taught you, you get taught things, man. It just happens. You learn from just watching others, the influence of others. So a lot of times parents won't want their kids to be around other kids that are having behaviors that are not great, okay? Leading to bad lifestyles, leading to unhealthy lifestyles, leading to damaging lifestyles to themselves and others, because the kid's going to be taught those things, even if it's not direct. It's indirectly direct. It's like what I say in the human body. There's things in the body that are directly other things. You know, the jaw is the shoulder. That's a video Dante and I filmed just a few days ago under the main site of In The Image Clothing Company. You know, the jaw is directly connected to the shoulder. So, okay, it's direct. But everything in the body is everything else in the body indirectly. The hand is the shoulder. The foot is the hip. You know, indirectly, but kind of directly. You lock the elbow out, right, straight, and the hand becomes the shoulder. You lock the knee out straight, and the foot becomes the hip. Even if your friends aren't directly teaching you things that you aren't going to benefit from, but are actually going to damage you, you're indirectly being taught things by just being around people who are doing those things. The unfortunate part about it, let's say this on the proper end. I want to say it like that. Can I say it like that? I'm going to say it. Yeah. Yes, that's okay. This is good to say like this. The unfortunate part about it is that there's universal truth. Meaning the truth is, no matter what, you can have friends that love you, you know, as much as they possibly could, and they actually really do. But if they're just doing behaviors that are unhealthy and damaging, no matter how much they love you, and they say stuff like, I'm never going to push anything on you that I'm doing, you know, it's my choice to do it. I know you're choosing not to do it, so I will not push it on you. They can go the entire time being around you, never like trying to get you to do what they're doing that's like an unhealthy thing. But that's where the phrase is, like I just said, the unfortunate part about it in this case is that there's universal truth. The truth is, universally, if you're around something, you're being taught it. No matter how loving your friends are, and they're saying like, we're not going to try to like teach you to do this. We're just going to do it, and you can be around us. We love you, and we want to just keep it separate. You're not keeping it separate. The truth is, you're being taught how to do it. Do you see what I mean? That's the truth. It's statistics, you know, meaning you can measure it, right? Measurable truth, measuring truth. The episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast I've been referencing throughout this. Yeah, I mean, you can measure it. You know, being around people doing things that you don't want to do, you can measure how much you start doing those things. People saying things, you know, using words and ways of explaining things, or just speaking, you know, derogatory terms, if you will, You can measure it. No matter how much you don't want to do those things, and no matter how much the people around you are saying they're not going to teach you to be like them, if you will, you're still being taught. So it's kind of, we can use the phrase of the episode's title, right? This episode 201 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, titled If I Wasn't Taught. You can have a kid coming back to the parents, right? Yeah, hear this correct. And when the kid comes back to his parents and says, yeah, please hear this correct. This is the point. You know, the kid goes back to the, this is almost too hard-hitting to even say. Truth is truth, man. This is happening all over the earth and every time period to ever be, every human being ever. As I say when I discuss where clothing sits, as the founder of In the Image Clothing Company, me, Evan Strong, there's a universal human body design. You can have an amputation, deformity, birth defect, major surgery, anything that's altered your body a little bit or quite a bit, it sets you apart a little bit or quite a bit, whatever. Man, woman, tall, short, skinny, fat, any age, any part of the earth, any time period to ever be, you're just a human being. Because there's a universal skeletal system, a universal human body with all the functioning to it that we can learn about the anatomy of, and it applies to every human across the planet. Some might be slightly different, but you can only be different from something. And that thing is the universal human design. There's universal truth to life. His name is Jesus Christ. God. Okay. Jesus Christ is God. That is an episode title of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. What I'm saying here is similar to how you couldn't possibly claim... I keep saying it like that. I guess I need to be that harsh with it. I'm not trying to call people out for claiming things, but that's what I need to be saying it like, I guess. It just keeps coming out like that, and that's how it needs to be. It's a very strong feeling I'm getting. You couldn't possibly claim you're not being taught. By coming home to your parents, listen to this. Well, first off, I will finish that, but it's like what I'm saying. You couldn't possibly claim in the Image Clothing Company's information doesn't apply to you. There's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled "Damning Yourself," and you damn yourself if you don't accept truth. It's not anything to do with us. Under In the Image Clothing Company, the truth we discuss, if it's truth, because we couldn't decide truth, it's apart from all of us. So no matter who's saying it, you're damning yourself if you're not accepting truth, is the point. And that's our entire focus under In the Image Clothing Company, is just getting down to universal truth. Because there is only one way the human body could ever work, so to allow it to, we have to get to the truth of how it works. We didn't design how it works, so it works how it does. There's truth to that. There has to be. It would be impossible for the human body to exist if it didn't exist. And it exists, and that's the truth. Okay, so what I'm saying is, you couldn't possibly go to your parents as a kid and say, something like, I don't know why you won't let me be around these friends of mine. They told me that they're not going to teach me what they do. I just love them. It's not what they're doing that I want to be around. It's them. And they really are good people. And that might be true. They might be good people doing some pretty terrible things. Okay, that's the point. Is you can't go home to your parents and say, they're not teaching me what they do. They do what they do when I'm not there, and I'm just around them. And it's about them. It's not about what they do. They're not even teaching me, mom and dad. You go home to your parents to say, it's like, I wasn't taught what they're doing. I told them not to tell me. I wasn't taught, right? It's like, it's the title, right? The title of episode 201 here of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. If I wasn't taught. You cannot go home to your parents as a kid and say, Mom and Dad, if I wasn't taught the bad things they're doing, why can't I be around them? Because the truth is, you were taught. You are being taught the bad things that they're doing. Take the word bad out of there. If you don't want to use that word, the unhealthy, the damaging, the destructive things that they're doing. Even if they're not doing that to other things, they're not damaging other things, they're not destroying other things, they're destroying themselves and what they're doing. Even if they're not intentionally teaching you, they're teaching you by you experiencing it and seeing it. And now you're damaging yourself because of what you've been taught. You're damaging yourself asking your parents, like, well, if I wasn't taught what they're doing, why can't I be around them? Your desire to be around people that are doing things that are damaging, whether it's to themselves or others, that's you damaging yourself. And you can't say something like you weren't taught that what they were doing is wrong, or you wouldn't be arguing with your parents to try to go be around them. You know it's wrong. There's universal truth to life. Only. Or life doesn't exist. Life either exists or doesn't. That's the truth. Right? I mean, there's just truth. Sometimes it's kind of like, who am I arguing with? I get that. Or I'll be outside filming a video under... A lot of times it's the main side of In The Image Clothing Company. I've just filmed so many videos. Hundreds and hundreds of videos outside as of today's date. Right, today's the 10th of January, 2026. Under the main side of In The Image Clothing Company, I have filmed hundreds. And we're coming up, right around 400 videos as of today's date, the 10th of January, 2026, on the main side of In The Image Clothing Company alone. We got a lot of videos, man. That's a lot of what we always will be and always have been as In The Image Clothing Company is, as I say, the gift of video. It's for things like this, documenting stuff that will never change, But anyway, I'll be out there and I'll just be like yelling about something. And sometimes I ask, like, who's he yelling at, right? Like the people watching it, if anyone does, right? It's like I get it. I'm just kind of yelling at no one, so it seems. But I'm sowing seeds. Okay, sowing seams. I'm the founder of a clothing company. Okay, In The Image Clothing Company. What I'm saying, though, in all seriousness, that is what I'm saying. But also, really, what I'm getting to is, even if nobody listens to any of this in my lifetime, if these videos live on and people like start to listen to this stuff after I die, it's still just as valid. It doesn't matter how like long it takes to get off the ground. Truth is truth. If it's true, it's always true, or it's not ever true. Truth is truth. So what I'm saying is human beings for literally ever. And then before I was ever born too, these words I'm saying in this could apply to all those people as well, right? Who lived before I did on this planet that God created for us, that we just kind of cycle through. Notice how small you are in the grand scheme of all this. You're just one of the 7 billion, if that's really the number, right? Or more people that live on the planet right now. Who cares about you? God does, right? Before you get all like self-loathing. It's like, you might already be in that state. So who's going to care about you then, if you don't think anyone does? Jesus Christ is his name. That's what I mean. You don't have to believe in anything, but I'm telling you the truth, that you have a perfectly loving God. Doesn't that sound great? Don't answer me, but it does. I can answer that for you. Because there's universal truth to life, and we all want to be loved, no matter what you think you want, right? What do you want? Is an episode title of In The Image Clothing Company Podcast. I know what you want. You want the same thing we all do, because we're all human beings. We're all the same thing. You want to be loved. You want people to tell the truth to you. You want to know what the truth is. Even if you don't want to believe that there is universal truth, you want there to be. Even if you don't know it. What I'm saying is, for every human being to ever live, this is valid information of, the episode's title here, 201 of In The Image Clothing Company Podcast. If I wasn't taught, well, you still were. You were still taught. You wouldn't even be having anything to talk about. It's like you can't go home to your parents as a kid, for example, like I'm saying, and say, well, if I wasn't even taught what they're doing, why can't I be around them? Well, they're doing something. You were taught they were doing something, or you wouldn't even be able to talk about the fact that they're doing something that you shouldn't know. You do know. You're talking about it. You were taught. At least that there's something going on. If you don't know the fullness of it, you at least know that it's happening. You were taught. You were taught more than you needed to be taught. Because if the thing that you know about, because you were taught about it, is something you shouldn't know more about, And you already know something you shouldn't have been taught, but you were taught. You can't claim you weren't. You can't say, well, if I wasn't taught the bad things, then why can't I be around them? You were taught. You were taught about the bad things. It's called, we can call it a gateway. The devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy. He sneaks his way in. Satan, the Antichrist, the devil. Label it. Call it what it is. Give it, it is what it is. And you got to be clear on what it is so you know the difference. Jesus Christ is God, and that's the truth. Satan is the liar, the father of all lies, as it says in Scripture. He's the one that'll lie to you and say, oh, you weren't taught anything yet. You were. You couldn't even speak on it. You couldn't even have anything to say if you weren't taught. That's the thing. Kids get, tossed around. I've talked about how I got tossed around literally as a kid, with my parents divorcing when I was 7 years old. I got tossed back and forth from household to household, just kind of where they could put me for a day or a few days or whatever, at different times. Just how it was growing up for me personally. But also, yeah, there's a lot to that. We'll talk about that as and where we do, but there's an episode of In the Image Clothing Company podcast titled Impermanence, and I talked a little bit about it. But we get tossed around as kids, from belief to belief, from lifestyle to lifestyle, from friend group to friend group, from approach to life to approach to life. And through all of that, you're still there. There's still truth to life, So you can't say anything like, I hung out with these friends and I wasn't really taught what they were doing, but they weren't doing good things. Now, you were taught that they weren't doing good things. You were taught. Get out of there. Get out of that situation. Do you see what I mean? You were taught. Everything that you do in life that's different than something else you've done, you had to be taught, or you couldn't know that it was different than something else. We get taught that there's differences in life. So, anyway, that's the point, really, is we need to be taught the difference. That's why I just focused on it. You need to be taught the difference between the Antichrist and Jesus the Christ. Because there's a difference. Even if you don't want to believe there is. Well, you can say it like this, sometimes maybe you feel sad, sometimes maybe you feel happy. You can believe that there's whatever you want, but the truth is you have emotions that sometimes you can't decide. There is truth. And even if you weren't taught that, you were taught that. You can't say, well, if I wasn't taught that there was emotions and I shouldn't make somebody else feel sad. No, you were taught there was emotions. When somebody stole your toy as a kid and you got all sad. That's you being taught by personal experience. No one has to say any kind of words to you. Maybe somebody says some words to you and it makes you feel bad. You just got taught that words can be painful. You were taught. You're always taught. You can never claim you weren't taught. You might have been taught wrong with certain things, I mean, you might not know anything about something. That's fine, sure. There's things in life, like I'm saying, that would never get taught anything about. But that's fine, You don't need to know what you don't need to know. I mean, right? But if we're just talking about things at all, you at least know enough about it to talk about it. Okay? You had to been taught sometime. You had to, bro. It had to come from somewhere. Right? Just like you. That's what I mean. You can say, like, if I wasn't taught where I came from, how would I know? Well, that's why we feed the lambs and feed the sheep. That's why we fish for mankind. That's why we gather people in. We call it gathering Israel, the lost tribes of Israel, the fold of God. We bring God's children back to him. We can go through this whole life and die after. Which will happen, right, for every body who has one, and every one who has a body, the body will return to the earth from where it was pulled. Okay, truth is truth. I don't have a religion to preach here. I'm speaking the truth. I'm trying to. deliver words that are not mine, right? The word of God is the truth. I'm just delivering it imperfectly. By the way, we said that, but just to kind of circle back, don't believe me. But truth is truth. It has to be. Or nothing exists if nothing exists. I mean, okay. What I'm saying here, though, is if you were never taught where you came from, you still came from somewhere. You know, you can't say like, well, if I was never taught where I came from, can't I just make it up? Sure. Why? Like, you're deceiving yourself at that point. Do you see what I mean? That's what's so crazy about it. There is truth. You had to have come from somewhere if you came. I mean, if you got born, it had to happen somehow. You can't have a belief on how birth works if you got born before you had a belief, right? You can't say, well, if I wasn't taught something, then I can just say whatever I want about it. No, you're damaging a lot of stuff by doing that. That's why we do all we can to not say anything if we don't know anything. And you did a good job at that before you started to speak as a child. Do you see what I'm saying? There's just truth to life, bro. Yeah. That's the thing. A lot of things are gateways, though, We like to, as the natural man, meaning the human beings that are an enemy to God. Oh, shoot, Unless we do all we can to yield to the enticings of the Holy Spirit of God and not do what we would naturally want. Naturally, human beings want to damage themselves. That's true. And it's weird because that doesn't seem right, but it's true and you see it, We want to feel bad so that there's problems to solve. We want to have a hard life so we can seek happiness. There's opposition. There's truth. Only. Always. That's it. So what I'm saying, though, is we want to do all that we can to get as close as we can to the things we shouldn't do without doing them as human beings, okay? And so that's the whole phrase about, like, coming home as a kid to your parents. Like, if I wasn't taught how to do the bad things they're doing, why can't I just stick around them and just stay out of what they're doing? Because what you want to do is get as close as you can to it without actually doing it. We want to get as close as we can to death without actually dying. People seek all these thrills, It's like, oh, shoot. If I wasn't taught that people got killed for doing this kind of stuff, I probably wouldn't do it, man. But what I want to do, is someone's saying hypothetically, right? It's like, what I want to do, oh my gosh, this is the point. This is what I'm saying. Is get as close as I can to dying. To just show everyone how crazy of a life you can live, man. It's like, if you weren't taught that you could die from doing something, you probably wouldn't want to do it. It's like people who do drugs. You know that drugs kill people. You were taught that. That's why you want to do them. Is that weird? Is that me trying to claim something? Is that me trying to speak for other people when I don't even know what's up? That's the truth. That's why you want that. That's why you want that, right? You want to be a bully because you were taught that you should be good. And you want to be as bad as you can without overstepping. That's what we do as human beings. We're sinful by nature. Naturally, we want to be evil. Well, naturally, we're just evil. So we want to do what's natural for us. Oh, shoot, Naturally, an evil tree will produce evil fruit. Right? It's natural for it to do that. The tree's evil. The tree that comes from it's naturally going to be how the tree is. Or the fruit that comes from the tree that's evil, right, is naturally going to be how the tree is. That's the point. Anyway, that's scripture. That's scripture paraphrased, but that's exactly what it's saying. That's scripture. Yeah. The Book of Mormon, right? Look it up. Look it up. Seriously, from the source though, but look it up. Really do it. That's what we're doing here. I'm delivering sermons of Jesus Christ, okay? That's what we do here. Under In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Dante. Hi. You cute boy. Anyway. Yeah, we want to do as much as we can to get to the line without crossing it. Because you were taught where the line was. You can't say, well, if I wasn't taught what was wrong, then why is it so bad if I go do these things? Well, you don't want to go do those things unless you know that they're bad or wrong. Do you see what I mean? That's what brings rebellion in human beings. We rebel against God because we know God. That's the whole thing about remember. God wants us to remember him. Look at Dante's stretch. I love you, Dante. I love you. We remember God, well, meaning we can. We know God, we came from his presence, we came into this world, okay, this man-made world placed onto God's natural earth. We came into this worldly or earthly existence. It's called a probationary state. Probation between dwelling with God and then coming here for a bit, and then we're going to go back and dwell with God again after we learn while we're here, okay? Not my words. This is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. There you go. It is, okay? But it's God's words, Jesus Christ's words. Don't believe me. I'm just a mouthpiece. And sometimes I can be out of tune, Check that out. That's funny. Red, the guitar was out of tune when I was playing him earlier. But really, that's what I'm saying, right? Is we need to remember God, because that's what happens is we know God to a degree. Even though we got our memories wiped when we got here on this planet, we knew God beforehand, and we're here to remember, as God says twice in a row, right? That's what I'm saying. He says the word remember twice in a row, because we can remember where we came from. And it's because we know a little bit, at least, what's good and what's bad, that we want to push the boundaries to do things bad. You wouldn't want to be doing anything potentially damaging if you didn't know it was damaging, right? You can't say, if I wasn't taught, you were taught, or you wouldn't be wanting to do it. We want to push the limits as human beings. That's what we want to do. That's what we want to do. That's our highest desire. As our like flesh, as the mankind, men or women, the human being that we are. That's our highest desire. Desirous or lustfulness. Right. Yeah, is what we are. We're lustful or we're desirous as human beings to do all that we can to get as close as we can to what we were taught was wrong without actually doing it. And then we claim that we weren't taught. That's where that whole thing about claiming comes in. I kept saying it, we claim things. We claim things as human beings, that we do know. We'll claim we don't know it. We'll plead ignorance, if you will. That's the thing, We'll plead and cry and pretend like I didn't know any better when you did. So you can claim like I wasn't taught. Well, if I wasn't taught, I shouldn't do it. How can I be in trouble for it? That's in times when you actually do know, though, even if nobody directly taught you, if you know it, you got taught somehow. You can't use it as an escape. We just want to get out of things as human beings. We want to do all that we can wrong without having to deal with the consequences. It's a universal thing. I've done it many, many times. There's a universal truth to life. The truth is we're universally evil. That's what I'm saying, bro. That's the truth. Don't believe me on it, but you know it. You know it, right? You get as close as you possibly can to cheating on someone you're in a relationship with you without actually cheating. And you do something with someone else that you say like, well, if I wasn't taught that was actually cheating, then how could I have known? It's like, well, why'd you do it then? Why'd you have such a desire to do it and do all you could to like sneakily do it, you know? You knew. You were taught. You knew. You can't claim you didn't know something you knew without just lying. You can lie all you want. That's devil behavior. There's universal truth. We'll get down to it. The truth always comes to the surface. The truth will set you free. God is the way, the truth, and the life, right? Jesus Christ speaks those words about himself. I'm just saying, bro, there's truth to life, and, you know, that's kind of the easy thing to do, is just claim we didn't know. That's funny. That's not quite really how I had the expectation of this episode going. When I went into it, I was going to, mostly talk about what I did at the beginning, and it kind of shifted the focus of how we're explaining the title of this part of the way through this. It just needed to. I mean, it just needed to be how it is. It's great. Look at him, man. Dante, dog. Oh, shoot. You good boy. Come. You're so good. You almost did a front handspring, buddy. He jumped off the bed onto his front legs and almost went over his head. For those of you in audio only, oh, shoot, bud. You good boy. Oh, you're so good. Oh, shoot. Anyway, yeah, that's what we do as human beings. We just want so badly to do what we shouldn't do. And so we'll claim we were never taught that we shouldn't. Hi, man. Are you so good? Look at that tail. Are you going to swat some flies away with that thing? Yes? Oh, shoot. Oh, I love you, Dante, so much. You're so good. You're so good. Dante, dog. You're so loved. You're so funny. You're a good boy. Dante's bandana is tied in a knot that's centered, by the way. We'll get into it. In the Image Clothing Company Poodles, I'm not trying to make any claims or promises that I can't keep, because I can't keep promises. Just meaning I could die tomorrow and promise I did something, would do something for you next week, and I wouldn't even be here to do it, and I didn't keep my promise. But almost no doubt, we're going to be selling bandanas for dogs under In the Image Clothing Company Poodles. I know, I'm not trying to make you uncomfortable like this, but I'm just trying to show them your bandana. It's okay, come here. Come sit on my lap, actually. Let's do this. This will be good. I can just kind of hug him like this, and he'll be comfortable. Yeah, almost certainly we'll have bandanas for sale. Okay, as one of the many dog products we'll have. We'll only ever sell products if it makes sense to, right? For the benefit of having them. For things that are beneficial to have is what I mean. You good boy. Oh, shoot. I love you, Dante. But what I'm saying is bandanas, it's like shoelaces or drawstrings for human beings. You tie one side of a knot over the other, or one side of a rope over the other side, or whatever you could call a rope. You're going to twist the whole dog's neck. And so we got to tie him in a knot that's centered, okay? Keeping collars centered. A huge focus for human beings and dogs under In the Image Clothing Company. Yeah. The importance of snug collars, right? In the Image Clothing Company's dreaded collar seam modification for human being clothing. Anything discrepant or different in the collar of a top. You are amazing, dog. I love Dante. You are great, okay? You are so good. Anyway, look at him nuzzle up against me, man. I love you. You're so good. Oh, my Dante dog. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. You tie a knot with anything. Dante and I filmed a video a few days ago under the main site of In the Image Clothing Company titled Left-Handed Knots versus Right-Handed Knots, And so, anyway, his bandana just sits horizontal right now with the knot that I've got it tied with. I don't know what the knot's called, so I can't even really give you a name for it that you could find out without me explaining it right now. But we'll show it as time goes. I'm in this for life. Evan Strong, the founder but leader for life of In the Image Clothing Company. So is Dante. Okay, as we've been saying it like that. Don't knock over the camera, buddy. Hey, man. You silly dog. You're so good. Oh, shoot. Dante. But anyway, yeah, it's cute. Bandanas. Well, it's so cool because they're so light. Having a bandana versus a collar that could potentially just be so heavy. Bandana is just a piece of fabric. You can write your information on it, right? Whatever information you would need as the owner of the dog. You can write the dog's name on it. We advocate for microchipping dogs, though, as well. That's a technology we didn't have in the past. Dante's microchipped. Just a very, very small little thing, like the size of a grain of rice. They usually put it right between the dog's shoulder blades back here. You can put your information in your dog. I know that the goal is natural under In the Image Clothing Company, and that doesn't seem so natural to some human beings. But it is. It's not damaging the dog. It's not actually... I mean, I guess I could claim whatever, and anyone else could too. But when we see what's really happening in the grand scheme of it, keeping less dogs in shelters and more dogs at homes, yeah, the microchip's not going to be removed from your dog the way that a collar could come off. But the bandana, you can write your information on the bandana in a location where you're not going to see it, like right where you tie the knot on the back of the dog's neck. There's a lot of beautiful things about bandanas for dogs. Well, also just the knot being tied on the back of the dog's neck. It's like when we have leads, like a slip lead or a leash connected to a dog. We want it to be coming off the back of the dog's neck. You don't want it to be hanging down on the front of the dog when you're up above the dog behind the back of it. You want it to be coming straight off the back of the dog's spine of its neck if you can. A leash or a lead of some kind. Anyway, there's a lot with the word lead, too, instead of the word leash. You want to lead your dog places. You don't want your dog to be pulling from a leash, okay? Even the wording helps us see visually, wow, in your mind's eye, in that case, I guess, what's supposed to be happening. If you don't want your dog to be pulling on a leash, you want to lead the dog. You don't want to be restraining the dog from a leash, right? It's kind of like an opposite-ended worded thing. It can kind of be used differently, but it's usually, that's usually just how that would mean, or what that would mean, a lead versus a leash. So I use the word lead, okay? You want to lead your dog where you're going. You don't want them to pull you, okay? And you know it if you've had experience with that. You do not want your dog to pull you. Well, unless you've got like a snow dog, a sled dog, like a husky or something, that's a different thing, though. That's not going to be the same at all. Okay. But yeah, that's the thing with bandanas. You can tie them on the back of the dog's neck, like Dante's is, and it'll stay there because of just the shape of the bandana, the weight of it and the shape of it. It'll just sit in a good location, and then it can be centered if you do a centered knot. It's so light, as we said. Okay, there you go. Healthy dog from a bandana. So thin, too. It's only got to be the thickness. It's got to be, just the thickness of the fabric, really. It's just so flexible and pliable. So healthy for the dogs. Dante. You're a good one. You're a good one. Good one. Oh, shoot. You're good. You're a good boy. Dante, dog. Anyway, there you go. Okay, that's episode 201 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast featuring Dante the dog, my beautiful standard poodle. He's stretching. Don't stretch your body, not Dante. I get it. He just woke up from a nap. But we just discuss what we do on In the Image Clothing Company's main side with allowing the body to work. It is what it is. We get into it in depth. There's no dispute to what we say. That's why our videos are so long. That's why we discuss things so thoroughly, just because we're just discussing things that we didn't decide. So it is what it is. Golly, like this dog is a good dog, even if I didn't say so. It's just the truth. Look at this dog, man. You are awesome, Dante. You know how much I love you? Yeah? You do, too. That's the thing. He does. Anyway, you are great, okay? You are great. Good. Boy. Good. Oh, shoot. We love our dogs, man. I mean, yeah. You're yawning. You are a yawning boy. A lot of that's the adjustment in his body, no joke. I mean, like I've said, Dante's a true rescue. He was in a lot of rough physical shape through matting in his hair, from, wearing imbalanced collars from where he came from. I don't know the details of where he came from, but he would have had to have had things like this happening. I know he was matted up. I saw a photograph of him when he came into the shelter, but as far as his hair, he had long hair. It was all tangled up and knotted up. That's what matting is in hair. Anyway, he's a true rescue, and so a lot of that yawning is just his jaw, just his body into a better position, which, like I'm saying, you can see it. I don't have to try to explain anything to you for you to be able to see these things under the gift of video through In the Image Clothing Company content. Okay, so there you go. But there's context on our content. Context over content. An episode title of In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Dante. So anyway, bandanas, man. It's cool because I have my information. He coughed a little bit. I have my information written on Dante's bandana. You'll never see it when it's tied on him. But if you ended up finding him, let's say he happened to get out or something, anyone's dog, right? Hypothetically, you take the bandana off and the information's there, but then, it just looks nice and clean when it's on him. That's what's so cool about bandanas. You can do that with the inside of a collar, put the information on the inside. Like in the Image Clothing Company clothing, our information will be on the inside. Our company logo will be on the inside. I've discussed this stuff since the very founding. Right? Minimal, simple, light, do everything clothing, do everything dog products, do everything dogs when we breed our poodles. That's our intent on the poodles we choose. Just to, like Dante, to be able to go everywhere, anywhere with us and do everything and just be good at it, right? Be content with it. So there you go. Okay. Thank you. Yeah. And that's a big point as well. With the title of this, episode 201 of In the Image Clothing Company podcast, if I wasn't taught, we want to limit that question being able to be asked at all costs. As human beings, in general, as disciples of Jesus Christ, who is the all-knowing, we want to spread the truth of all things, meaning just the name, Jesus Christ, who is all-knowing. If you know Jesus Christ, he knows everything, okay? He's the answer to everything. And so that's a big point, What we do within the Image Clothing Company, though, teaching people how to have their bodies work, teaching people things that are altering their bodies that they just don't know, and they could ask that question, well, if I wasn't taught, how could I know? Similar to, like I said, that's similar to what we were saying in that episode titled, How Could You Know? Under In the Image Clothing Company podcast. Well, the point is, we want to limit this question of if I wasn't taught, limit the possibility of it even being able to be asked. Hi, beautiful boy. You beautiful dog. Oh my gosh. See his mobility in his neck? Letting dogs stay natural. I'm telling you, fruits of the labor. Don't believe me, but it's happening. You don't see domesticated dogs have as much mobility as Dante does. Not very often. And all of our poodles will be like this because that's what we do here. Okay, that's the point. Is doing things that's undisputed, so you couldn't even have to question it. That's what I'm saying right now. That is what I'm saying. We want to do all that we can to limit the possibility for the question to be asked if I wasn't taught. By us doing all that we can to teach everything that we need to teach to people who, even if you don't think you do, right, need to know it. Because truth is truth, and you need to know it because it applies to you regardless. That's what I say. You don't have to care about things that you maybe don't care about. If they apply to you, they apply to you, right? Like how clothing is affecting your body, even if you don't care to care, it's affecting your body, man. We give so many free modifications in clothing under In the Image Clothing Company. You have to do them if they're there, and if, well, not because we say it, that's what I'm saying, but if you not doing them means that your body will be damaged, then that's the truth, if that's the truth, right? So you don't have to care at all, but you got to do it if you're, if you're not going to be reaping the repercussions from it, So it's kind of like if you know something and you know you need to tell it to other people, you get a prompting by God, like a feeling, if you will, from inside of you, and maybe you don't know really what a prompting from God is, but that's what that is. You get a feeling inside of you that you just need to tell somebody something that they just kind of need to know, and you know it, and you just somehow know that you need to tell them. You got to do it, man. You got to tell them. If it's a true, real prompting, it's like a good feeling, like you can really tell, you've got some information that you need to say to someone. That's what I'm saying. Doing all we can, just as disciples of Jesus Christ, God Himself, to limit in all ways we possibly can the opportunity for that question to even be able to be asked. If I wasn't taught. Well, we teach. That's why we teach. That's why we go around and we say, hey, you ever heard of Jesus Christ? Let me introduce you. Because if you don't get taught, you might not really know. Okay? That's the point. And that can come through any way that can come through. Like I'm saying, God will speak. There's nothing too big for God. God is bigger than all things. God's bigger than the devil. God's bigger than us and our beliefs, right? God will flush your beliefs down a toilet. When stuff just comes out of my mouth that casually, you can tell I'm not even trying to like think up what I'm saying. This is seriously just letting the Spirit of God lead. And this discussion's just happening. It's beautiful. That's what I was saying. It had a shift. Not that the first part was wrong. We just needed, in addition to that, to shift into what we've said in this latter part of this. It's like just kind of a different approach on how we're explaining the title topic, Yikes. I say some things sometimes. I sound very accusacious. Oh, yeah. Sometimes I'm just being very plainly accusacious. And sometimes it's like rightfully so. Okay. Just to be clear. Yeah. There's times when that's just fine to do. Okay. Like accusing your kid of just trying to do bad things when they're saying, well, if I didn't know they were doing bad things, well, if you didn't know they were doing bad things, you wouldn't be trying so hard to get over there to be involved. Right? You're accusing your kid of lying to you because you know your kid's lying to you. Sometimes accusations are good. Okay? It's got to be seen with the proper context. I was almost going to say it's got to be seen with the proper authority. That's truth, though. That as well, yes. That's what I mean, right? There's just truth to life. And if you don't know what things mean, man, if you can see Dante, I'm going to do this. I don't normally do this on the Image Clothing Company podcast. I'm going to tilt the camera down just to show you. Letting dogs stay natural. Look at him. He just curls up. I say he curls up like a little dragon. He curls so tight because he's allowed to physically. There's not a collar tucked around his neck. Oh, well, you saw this when he was on the bed, if you did, right? He was curled up in a similar way. That's fine to show it like this as well, but just pretty much the same position he would have been in up there on the bed. Anyway, so healthy, so healthy physically. Yeah. If you weren't taught, it's not your fault. That is true. That is true. Okay. We got to make sure that end gets heard correct in this as well. If we ask the question of this title, if I wasn't taught, well, if you truly weren't, then it's not your fault. Anything you do in life that you actually weren't taught is wrong, then yeah, it's not your fault. But on the other end, we've said what we've said in here, and that's the case, that there's a lot of things that we just want to claim we weren't taught so that we can do them. When we were taught, we shouldn't. Okay. It is on both ends, but just because it always is, there's opposition in all things. Okay. That's how these discussions go under In the Image Clothing Company podcast. A lot of the time is just, I'm not taking a side to stuff. Well, I mean, I don't take a side in life in general. Okay. But there's sides to things. That's what I mean. Yeah, that's funny. That's all I'm going to explain with that, because that's what I'm saying is we just discuss the sides to things. That's often how these go. It's just kind of like a deep discussion on, can we just see this from both sides? Something that rarely happens in our world, Yeah. Good. Okay. Anyway, there you go. Today is the 10th of January, 2026. My name is Evan Strong, the founder of In the Image Clothing Company. This is In the Image Clothing Company Podcast, episode 201, titled, If I Wasn't Taught. I sound like a radio host. I don't know if I'm cutting it. I'm not trying to cut it if I don't need to cut it. I'm just, here, man. And while I am, let's document what's going on. That's what I say, right? We're just here to document. It's just another day mark documentation, brother. But we will be down in St. George. Come to Poodle Parade events, right? Bring your poodles of any size, purebred or mixed poodles. If you want. We'll get people into nature and dogs into nature. We got to move down to St. George, Utah. We're in Utah County, Dante and I. It's cold, man. It's in the 20s degree Fahrenheit. The past couple days. It's been in the 30s. It gets a lot colder than that when and where it does here in Utah. I'm Utah native. I'm used to the cold. Meaning I'm used to it happening. Getting cold in the winters. But we'll get down there. Beautiful Red Rock, true desert, St. George, Utah. Very southernmost part of Utah. We'll do so much outdoor as we've been doing and just as we naturally do. He's grooming himself, and it's very cute. And I was also just like watching to see what he's doing. He's like biting something out of his paw there, like right above his paw. Oh, you know what? Can I see? You good? It's good. I don't know for sure what he was actually biting at right there. But Dante has dew claws still. A lot of times they'll declaw. If you call it that. They'll remove the dew claws on dogs. 2 little claws, one on each of their front legs. Yeah, just kind of like up above their paw, kind of up their wrist on the inside. I wonder if that's what he was biting at. But no, I don't think so. He's just kind of biting at his paw there, just right above his paw, kind of at his wrist. What is it? Just something you chewing on a little bit? You're so good, man. That's ridiculous. Okay. So yeah, come hang out and do what you do. Don't come if you don't want to. But like I say, you can hang out with us essentially through the gift of video. I mean, just watch our videos. You don't have to watch them for us. Just like I say, when you come to events, please do not come for us. Like any of In the Image Clothing Company's team.